Chapter 1013. Wei Ziqin and Xiao Lin were both very spirited. They were mystic cultivators, so their physical strength and mystic conscious were different from normal people's. This bit of torment was simply nothing to them. Arbor then retracted her gaze and went through the blessing ceremony according to the procedure. She even purposely followed the most tedious and strict procedure, putting in the effort to save face. In any case, she wasn't tired. Since she had to come here early in the morning to offer incense, she would go through the most tedious and formal ceremony and make those orioles and swallows behind her suffer greatly. With the incense mist surrounding her, this bunch of royal concubines, princesses, and madams couldn't bite her out of anger. The master abbot couldn't help but exclaim in admiration as he looked at her young age, yet she was willing to endure hardships and pray for the kingdom and its people. Sure enough, it was already 10:00 in the afternoon by the end of this procedure. Everyone's stomachs were rumbling with hunger because of her, especially the elderly concubines and madams like Consort Cheng who didn't move much all day. Their faces were all pale, and their heads were dizzy from the sun's rays as they complained incessantly in their hearts. Those young princesses, commandery princesses, and young misses were also lamenting that they couldn't take it anymore. They had set out from their homes before 3 in the morning, but they had only freaking eaten a bit of breakfast and pastries. Some of them had even courted disaster by coming on an empty stomach. This time, they had already been tormented until noon, yet they hadn't even had a sip of water. This crown princess deliberately wanted to kill them all in this temple. At this moment, they were all extremely envious and jealous that Commandery Princess Yi-en, who was attending to the Queen Dowager, didn't come along. The fourth princess, Mo Shuang, had also been grounded at home by the old great king due to her well-known indiscretions, so she couldn't come. Originally, they were more or less mocking this fourth princess who didn't have any status, but now, they really wanted to cry. They were so envious that the princess didn't have to suffer this. The crown princess was refreshed and in high spirits. She wasn't out of breath at all after going through this tedious prayer process. Honghai Temple's abbot, Venerable Master Konghui, clasped his hands together in admiration and said, "The crown princess is so young, yet she is not afraid of hardship and worries about the kingdom and its people. Her qualities are especially commendable." His string of praises made Consort Cheng and company so angry that they were seeing stars. "Your Highness." Suddenly, a cry of alarm was heard. A palace maid accompanying her hurriedly used her body to support Lu Fei's falling body. It turned out that Lu Fei was tired and hungry. Her body couldn't bear it and she fainted first. The crown princess walked forward expressionlessly and glanced at Lu Fei. Suddenly, she raised her hand and said, "Someone, bring a basin of ice water and splash it." Lu Fei, who had fainted, suddenly stood up and waved her hands, "No need, no need." This consort only fainted for a moment. "I feel much better now." At the end of her speech, Lu Fei looked at the strange gazes of the monks around her. She was so embarrassed that she felt embarrassed. After pretending to faint for less than a second, the crown princess caught him red-handed. Was there anything more cruel and merciless than this? The corners of everyone's mouths twitched, but in their hearts, they wanted to cry but had no tears. If pretending to faint was useful, they all wanted to faint. 8th Princess Mo Yu had been holding it in for a long time. At this time, she finally couldn't hold it in anymore and burst into laughter. She could tell that today, this stoic-faced sister-in-law was harboring the idea of torturing these consorts and madams to death and was openly tormenting them. The crown princess looked at them solemnly and said, "This crown princess is going to sweep the Nimpin Tower." Chapter 1014. Everyone let out a sigh of relief, thinking to themselves, "Oh my, it's finally over. Thank the heavens, they can finally return to their rooms to rest, drink water, and eat." Unexpectedly, the crown prince consort's face tightened as she said in an especially cold and merciless tone, "Before that, all of you must kneel here and face my great Mo kingdom's guardian pagoda. Pray to the heavens in unison and wait for this crown prince consort to finish sweeping the pagoda and come out." Consort Chang's body trembled as she fell onto the body of the palace maid behind her. The group of concubines were about to cry. Why are you all looking at this crown princess with such bitter faces? Could it be that you didn't come here with sincerity to pray for our Mo Kingdom citizens? The crown princess coldly scolded, you can't even endure a little bit of suffering after praying for a day? Then why don't I see you all complaining about your daily lives of luxury and being provided for by the Mo Kingdom citizens? You have to take responsibility for the treatment you enjoy. When we return to the palace, I will definitely report this matter to the great king and the queen in detail. This crown princess has seen and remembered every single one of your actions. I definitely won't slander any of you. The crown princess spoke with conviction, angering the group of concubines and madams into speechlessness. Wei Ziqin speechlessly looked at her daughter. At first, she also thought that her daughter was going to complete this blessing ceremony with an especially serious and devout attitude. But halfway through, she felt that something was wrong. This was blatantly punishing those imperial concubines in broad daylight. She didn't mind kneeling for a while. She had been tossing and turning since early morning and had only secretly drunk a bit of holy water, but now she didn't feel tired at all. Xiao Lin didn't have to worry about her at all. Her small face was rosy, and only a few drops of sweat seeped out of the tip of her nose. Her eyes were shining as she looked at her older sister. On the other hand, those pitiful concubines and madams, when had they ever suffered so much? At this moment, all the concubines had silently made a very important decision. Next time, if the great king had the idea of having the crown princess lead a team for some activity, they would definitely raise both hands and feet to oppose it to the end. They strongly requested Her Majesty the Queen to lead the team. The Queen should be the one to come to this prayer event. She had just thrown in the towel and quit, and in the end, this fiend had come and killed them all. Everyone unanimously decided that they would not allow the black-hearted crown princess to participate in any large-scale activities in the future. At this time, darling Qiao didn't know that by making an example out of her, she had saved her from a lot of trouble in the future. The monks in the temple began to call out their names. The last word, kneel, made Consort Cheng and the others groan in their hearts. They forced themselves to kneel down miserably. Kneeling down was not the end. He still had to accompany the monks in the temple to pray to God until the crown princess came back from sweeping the pagoda. Everyone secretly cried out in their hearts, "Crown princess, we beg you. Don't sweep the pagoda, let's go back." The crown princess figure disappeared from everyone's despairing eyes. Woo-woo, this silly crown princess, she wouldn't really sweep the pagoda floor by floor, right? Then would they be able to drink some water before evening and go home? Once the pagoda door closed, Arbor's expression turned completely cold. His figure flashed, and he arrived at the top of the 9-story pagoda at the fastest speed. His gaze coldly looked at the man and woman tied up in the middle of the pagoda. Long time no see. Chapter 10:15. Woo-woo. The woman who was tied up in the middle of the group of men began to mutter incoherently. While setting up a soundproof defensive boundary, Xiao Mu nodded her small chin in that direction. Stay Up Late took out a rag stuffed in Younghee's mouth. That's right, the woman tied up in the middle of the 9-story tower was Younghee, who had once been favored, but was now buried deep in the mud. The dwarf tied up beside Younghee was Black Cat, who had been captured by the crown prince. This Lord Black Cat, at this moment, looked as if there was not a single piece of good flesh on its body. It had been tormented to the point that it was already on the verge of death. Are you surprised? Are you surprised? Arbor walked over to Younghee with small steps, a cold smile on his face. What are you doing? Little witch. Zheng Ru's entire body trembled, and her eyes were filled with terror. The way he looked at Xiao Mu was like he was looking at a devil that had walked out from hell. You still don't understand? Xiao Mu swept her a disdainful glance before gently tucking the strands of hair that had fallen in front of her eyes behind her head. She said lightly, I want you to die. Stay Up Late lowered his head and tried his best to pretend that he didn't see anything. He was like an old monk sitting in meditation. I thought that you would stop after entering the cold palace. Who knew that you would be so stupid? Xiao Mu sighed and glanced at Ao Yi, who was beside her. You tell her. It was tiring to talk to such an idiot. Stay up late's mouth twitched. He cleared his throat and said, you hired some beggars on the streets and alleys to spread rumors about the appearance of a demon and disaster. At first, we didn't know who set this trap. But the crown princess could sense that this was directed at her. Ao Yi truly admired their young crown prince consort. She was able to sniff out something unusual from such a brainless incident. The crown princess knew that the mastermind wouldn't let this go. She left the capital for a few days to give us time to investigate. Most importantly, the crown prince managed to pry open the dwarf's mouth and found out many things. For example, he gave you a strong revival pill and lied to you that you had recovered. He wanted you to deal with the crown princess. In fact, once 7 days are up, you will turn into a pile of flesh and blood. Your body will never recover. Zheng Ru screamed, impossible. My face and body have already recovered. Don't deceive yourself and others anymore. Xiao Mu scoffed, your face starts rotting at night, right? The Yuxingzi I put in the beautifying pill is a heat poison. Not everyone can cure it. It's you. It's you. Courtesan Zheng shrieked in horror as she glared at Xiao Mu, her eyes about to split open. Beautifying pill? What beautifying pill? Could it be that? The beautifying pill that her brother had tried so hard to obtain had been tampered with by the little crown princess? Ah! Thinking of this, Zheng Ru's chest was filled with depression, and she almost immediately screamed crazily. I want to see the great king, I want to see the great king. Let me out. The great king, I want to see the great king. Didn't you plan a play for me? Xiao Mu gazed disdainfully at courtesan Zheng before saying coldly, I'll rearrange this play for you to make it even more exciting. Broken Dreams. Chapter 10:16. Young-hee trembled as she looked at Arbor, not knowing what to do. You, what are you doing? You witch. What are you trying to do? I want to see the great king. The great king, the great king. Ah! Witch? Xiao Mu muttered these 2 words in amusement. With a slight movement of her slender fingers, she took out 2 talismans glowing with blue light from her inner world and tossed one of them to Ao Yi, who was standing beside her. Then, as you wish. The 2 figures disappeared before Young-hee's eyes as fast as lightning. Her eyes widened in disbelief. Why? They disappeared before her eyes in the blink of an eye. What kind of talisman did that witch use? Ah! What Young-hee felt at the last second was perhaps endless fear, or perhaps endless regret and despair. She knew very well that the bottom of Nimpin Tower had already been hollowed out by Mammy Su and the people from Shuntian Prefecture. They had filled it with a powerful weapon. Once the time was up, they would not hesitate to set the tower on fire. Originally, the one to enjoy all this pain and fear would be that little bitch, the crown princess. But now, it was her turn to wait here in panic. No matter how much she screamed, her voice was blocked by the defensive enchantment. Until death, no one appeared before her. Boom! The people worshipping in front of the pacification pagoda were the first to feel the ground tremble slightly. Then, their expressions changed drastically as they stood up. Xiao Yao grabbed Wei Zichin's wrist and whispered in her ear, Madam, don't worry. The crown princess sent a message to Xiao Yao. She has safely left Nimpin Tower. Madam and young miss, just wait and see what happens next. Wei Zichin's anxious heart finally calmed down, and she slowly heaved a sigh of relief. Wei Zichin pulled her daughter and retreated to the side of the crowd with Xiao Yao. Wei Zichin looked coldly at the chaotic scene in front of her. At this moment, the entire Nimpin Tower was affected by the explosion and was leaning to the left. Bricks and dust mixed with the glass ceiling fragments fell down one after another. For a moment, the monks in the temple wailed and prostrated themselves on the ground. The group of concubines and madams were also extremely surprised. They all covered their heads and temporarily lay on the ground without moving. Some of the bolder ones raised their eyes and stared blankly as Nimpin Tower collapsed and disappeared inch by inch in front of them. After this fiery explosion was repeated 3 times, more than half of the Nimpin Tower had collapsed, leaving behind only a small portion of the tower's wreckage. The group of concubines looked at the dilapidated ruins with fear. They were supported by their respective palace maids in a daze and barely managed to stand up. Although Consort Cheng was also surprised, she was the first to recover her wits. Her eyes flashed as she said, "Someone come quickly. This is bad. The crown princess is still in Nimpin Tower and hasn't come out yet." Lu Fei couldn't help but sneer when she heard this. The crown princess is really funny. She just stepped into Nimpin Tower and the entire tower exploded. Just how much does this pacification pagoda dislike the crown prince consort? The vassal king consort of an Nan also sneered. If you want to condemn someone, you can always find a pretext. Princess Consort's words are too hurtful. If you don't have concrete evidence, it's better not to speak carelessly. Otherwise, you will inevitably have a bad reputation for being disrespectful to the Eastern Palace consort. A thin and weak voice suddenly sounded with slight ridicule. "Noble Lady Ying, you." Princess Anam's expression abruptly changed. A small noble lady dared to mock her, Princess Anam. How hateful. Chapter 1017. This concubine was only giving advice out of goodwill. Noble Lady Ying spoke softly with a delicate and bashful appearance, causing the vassal king consort of an Nan to feel extremely disgusted. Preposterous. This princess consort still needs you to give advice. I was also worried about the crown princess's safety, that's why. You don't need to worry about this crown princess's safety. An icy voice broke the current clamor. It silenced all the voices in the room. The vassal king consort of an Nan is truly imposing. Arbor was dressed in a white robe and only used a simple white jade hairpin to tie her hair into a young girl's bun. She walked over with a calm and composed expression. Consort Cheng gaped in shock, but she immediately lowered her eyes submissively. "Crown Princess," everyone called out in unison. Arbor used an icy and judgmental gaze to observe this Princess Anam, who had an unsightly expression, and pursed her small lips in ridicule. The descendants who fought alongside the late king are indeed extraordinary. You can even look down on the great king's beloved concubine. Then presumably, the great king doesn't hold much significance in your hearts. Crown Princess, don't speak nonsense. Princess Anam nervously tightened the embroidered handkerchief in her hand. How serious were these words? What did she mean by the great king doesn't hold much significance in their hearts? Did she mean that their vassal king of an Nan's estate could look down on even the great king? Looking down on the great king, confiscating their property and exterminating their entire family was considered a light punishment. This damned little bitch, every word of hers struck at the heart. Her mouth was truly deadly vicious. If it weren't for the fact that there were so many people surrounding them, she really wanted to slap this stoic face in front of her. She was truly too hateful. Just a few words were enough to stab at her heart. Princess Anam pretended to cover her chest with her hands, pretending that her heart was in pain from being provoked by the crown princess. Arbor sneered, the vassal king of an Nan's consort. I advise you not to challenge my bottom line again and again. I'm not what you think I am, a flower in a greenhouse. Have you heard of the snow domain divine flower? This is an extremely miraculous divine herb that only blooms in the coldest and coldest places. The little stoic walked towards Princess Anam step by step, causing her body to subconsciously lean backwards. Usually, when someone gets close to it and touches it once or twice, it won't have any reaction. The third time, when it gets angry, it will suddenly open all of its petals. Arbor waved his sleeve slightly. It was just a subtle and casual movement. However, Wu Hongma was pierced by her cold eyes. Her heart trembled slightly, and she involuntarily took a big step back. The beautiful divine flower of the snow domain has sharp icicles within its petals. TSK, it swallowed that person alive. Not even a trace of bone remains. Arbor stared at her with a chilly gaze. That scene was truly very beautiful. I'm afraid none of you can imagine it. Everyone simultaneously sucked in a cold breath. Princess Anam, how do you think this crown princess compares to the divine flower of the snow domain divine flower? Are we similar? Wu Hongma actually couldn't say a word, and cold sweat slowly slid down her forehead. Arbor's expression was still as he coldly ordered, someone. Thoroughly investigate everyone present and find out who isn't present right now. Tell me your name right now. When the order was issued, the royal concubines and princesses all looked at each other and subconsciously squeezed into the crowd. They looked at this stoic-faced little crown princess with bewilderment and uncertainty. Chapter 10:18. Was she going to investigate thoroughly now? These noblewomen had suffered quite a bit of shock, and now all they wanted to do was to go home with a sullen face. But now, the crown princess still refused to let them go. They really wanted to cry. If Her Majesty the Queen had led the group to pray for blessings today, there probably wouldn't be so many twists and turns happening. Reporting to the crown princess. Aoyi brought a group of people and pretended to investigate, then came forward to report, all the concubines, princesses, infanta, madams, and young misses, as well as their accompanying maids are all here. When everyone heard this, they all let out a sigh of relief. Fortunately, the maids around them didn't cause any trouble for them. Only Zheng, who received the Great King's verbal order to come with the group, is missing. Zheng? Wasn't that the former consort Zheng? Everyone hurriedly turned around and searched for Yonghe's figure back and forth. Sure enough, after looking around, they couldn't see her. That person was truly a person with means. She had entered and left the cold palace several times and was still one of the Great King's beloved concubines. It was said that this time, she had asked the Great King's special order to follow the group to Fushan Honghai Temple to pray for blessings and repent. At that time, she would stay in the temple to continue praying for the Empress Dowager and the Great King for 3 more months. Everyone's attitude towards Zheng along the way couldn't be considered cold. In fact, there was even a hint of eagerness. This was because they all felt that as long as Zheng sincerely prayed for blessings in the temple for 3 months, even if she couldn't temporarily restore the title of consort Zheng, the Great King would definitely promote her from the position of a palace maid. There was no other way. Consort Zheng was the Great King's true love. As long as she stood in front of the Great King's heart would be unreasonably biased. But now, everything seemed to be developing towards an unexpected and strange ending. Zheng wasn't actually present. Then where could she go? The madams looked at each other and then closed their mouths in silence. Very quickly, the drama entered the highest and most shocking stage. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Aoyi and his men found courtesan Zheng's body, which had been blown beyond recognition, in the ruins of the pacification tower. Only a small part of her body was left. The expressions of the concubines and madams changed subtly. Consort Cheng even glanced at the crown princess's cold, expressionless face more than once. The crown princess stood there expressionlessly with her hands folded in front of her and her back straight. Glancing at courtesan Zheng, who had been carried over, the crown prince consort flew into a rage. Preposterous. Master Konghui had made it clear that only the Great King, the Crown Prince, and the Crown Princess were allowed to enter the pagoda. Why was the little Yonghe inside? What identity did she use to go in? There was complete silence. No wonder she attracted the wrath of the 9 heavens and caused the pagoda to explode. This demoness who brought disaster to the country deserves to die. What a pity that the pagoda was implicated by her. The corners of Stay Up Late's mouth twitched. Venerable Master Konghui also wept sorrowfully, and he led the monastery's monks to kneel down before Qiao Mu. He wailed miserably, "I implore the Crown Prince Consort to uphold justice for the entire Great Sea Monastery. Punish this demoness who brought disaster to the country. Give our Honghai Temple justice." The old nanny beside Consort Cheng tugged at Consort Cheng. Consort Cheng snapped out of her daze and quickly said with a serious expression, "Young-hee was so daring to sneak into the pagoda and bring disaster to the country. I implore the Crown Princess to uphold justice for the Honghai Temple." Chapter 1019. Crown Princess, please uphold justice for the monks of the Honghai Temple. Investigate this matter thoroughly, and restore peace and tranquility to the Honghai Temple. The group of madams and young misses were all shrewd people. They all followed Consort Cheng and bowed to the Crown Princess in unison. Aoyi coughed lightly, and Lightning, who had been waiting impatiently for a long time, scurried out of the pagoda ruins with a swoosh. He shouted loudly for everyone to hear, "Crown Princess, this subordinate has investigated. There's another man in this pagoda." Everyone, This time, whether they heard it or pretended not to, their expressions were extremely strange. This praying activity really tormented those slightly older concubines and madams to the point that their old bones were about to fall apart. When they returned, they became even more determined in their hearts. They absolutely couldn't let the Crown Princess lead the group again. In the imperial study of the king's palace, the old great king clutched the memorial that his son had sent to him. He clutched it so tightly that the entire memorial was wrinkled, but he didn't realize it. His face was filled with cold anger as he glared at the Crown Prince. "Impossible. The facts are all there. She can't deny it." The Crown Prince's voice was indifferent. From the day the Luo family troop entered the palace, Young-hee had been in contact with that man. Aren't 3 witnesses enough? This son still has the letters they exchanged as material evidence. Young-hee's trip to the Honghai Temple in Fu Mountain this time was simply to meet with someone in secret. She had long planned this. The old great king looked like he had suffered a huge blow. He suddenly slumped into his chair, dejected and at a loss for words. "Royal father, you still don't understand." Mo Yen looked at her old father with cold eyes and said coldly, "Shuntian Prefecture has been scheming for a long time. They've done everything possible to control us. Now, they've already brazenly planted someone by your side. Furthermore, they've disregarded your royal authority and fooled around under your nose. This is blatant contempt for you. It's also contempt for our entire Mo family. Do you still need to endure this?" Mo Yen abruptly lifted the corner of her robe and knelt on one knee in front of her father. Her voice was sonorous, forceful, and abnormally cold as she said, "This son requests the order to gather all the mystic cultivators in the country and lead 1,000,000 soldiers to annihilate the remnants of Shuntian Prefecture in one fell swoop." "Father. I, Mo, am not afraid of anyone. So what if it was the Shuntian Prefecture of the Middle 6 prefectures? Do you think the Middle 6 constabularies can strut around in our territory? I will prove it to you. In this world, no one can overstep our authority. No one can try to start a war and escape unscathed. From the generation of our ancestors, the Mo family's world has been fought for generation after generation. We don't need to fear anyone." There was no need for him to bow down to any of the mansions. "I will use my strength to let them know that the Mo is not to be trifled with." "What Middle 6 constabularies? Tell them to scram back to where they came from." "Royal Father, I request Royal Father to issue an edict. Place that nation-wrecking enchantress on the city gate tower and expose her to the sun for 3 days and nights. Whip her 1,000 times during the day and 1,000 times during the night as a warning to others." The great king stared blankly at his son and smiled bitterly. This was his son. He was high-spirited and unrivaled. If he decided to deal with you, he would definitely have all the evidence and make it impossible for you to refute. He had long told Zhengru not to provoke that savage couple, but alas. "Write the edict." The great king sighed. The crown prince watched Gong Chung and hurry out to announce the edict while wiping his head of cold sweat. He then slowly walked out of the royal study. Chapter 1020. As he gazed icily at the distant horizon, Mo Lian's lips curled up in a mocking smile. Young-hee, I want you to die but not enter the royal mausoleum. She meant what she said. Now, she had to bear the title of a country-destroying enchantress and be reviled for generations to come. Speaking of which, didn't you ask for this yourself? The next day. Big news, big news. Honghai Temple's Nimpin Tower really collapsed. All of the citizens of the capital rushed to spread the news and everyone knew about this. They also knew that the great king had decreed that the country-destroying enchantress who caused Nimpin Tower's collapse was to be whipped for 3 days and nights. State uncle Zheng had been demoted to a commoner, and the Zheng family's mansion had been taken back by the king. All of their assets had been confiscated. The great king had issued a self-condemning edict and locked himself in the king's palace. The citizens all rushed to the city gate tower and spat at Young-hee's body in disdain, cursing this country-destroying enchantress. But all of this had nothing to do with Arbor. She prepared everything early in the morning. After bidding farewell to her family, she sat in the crown prince's carriage and went with him to the northern city gate. Qin estates Qin Susu, Duan families Duan Siren, Do families Do Fengqi, Fan families Fan Qiuming, and Hong families Hong Bai had all been waiting at the city gate for a long time. Other than Qin Susu, the others all had impatience on their faces. Can we set off now? Do third Miss Do Fengqi asked unhappily. She was ridiculing them in her heart. It really was the crown princess. She had to be escorted by His Highness the Crown Prince the entire way. She was so delicate sitting in the carriage. Did she think she was going on a scenic tour? If she was so delicate, she should stay at home and not come out, so as to not implicate her teammates. Wait. Xiao Mu tossed down the curtain and threw them a single word, not intending to explain at all. Do Fengqi was so angry that her pretty face changed color. Qin Susu shrugged indifferently. She walked to a tea stall at the city gate with her sword in her arms and sat down. She ordered half a pot of tea. At this moment, a portion of the agitated crowd ran to State Uncle Zheng's house and threw stones and mud, blocking the Zheng family members at the back door. They threw stones whenever they saw someone coming out. The scene was extremely chaotic. Third Miss Zheng, fifth young Master Zheng, and the others secretly smuggled out some mystic currency and food, but they were confiscated by the imperial court soldiers who chased after them. Those pampered young ladies and young masters were all so anxious that their eyes turned red. They looked like they were fighting with their lives on the line, wanting to take back the private goods they had hidden. It was at this time that Wu Xiao'en rushed over with his brothers. With a glance, he spotted the silent sixth young Master Zheng in the crowd. He promptly berated those agitated passers-by and shoved them to the side, squeezing in front of sixth young Master Zheng. Sixth young master, are you all right? Little sixth Zheng shook his head, his expression somewhat perplexed. When he woke up early in the morning to practice his swordsmanship, he was informed that the great king had sent people to raid the Zheng family's mansion. As a mystic cultivator, all of his important items were placed in his inner world, so the soldiers naturally couldn't come to raid his inner world. However, those half-sisters and half-brothers who shared the same father but had different mothers suffered a calamity. From early in the morning until now, the entire courtyard had been in an uproar. Wu Xiao'en said anxiously, "Sixth young master, don't worry. I bought a small courtyard for myself in the Mo Kingdom capital. If you don't have a place to stay, you can go there first." "No need." Sixth Zheng shook his head and said, "I'm leaving the city now. I'm afraid I won't be back until a month later." Chapter 1021. That's fine. A hint of a smile appeared on Wu Xiao'en's chubby face. "You can contact me after you return. Sixth young master, don't regard me as an outsider." "Old sixth, what are you saying?" Suddenly, a shriek was heard. Third Miss Zheng couldn't win against several soldiers and could only helplessly watch as her sole bag of mystic currency was snatched away. She scrambled up from the ground in a sorry state and hastily rushed to Sixth Zheng's side. You don't need to stay, but we need to. Sixth Zheng dodged to the side. Without even looking at Third Miss Zheng, he directly patted Wu Xiao's shoulder. Let's go. Fine, then I'll send you off. Wu Xiaoan was also a shrewd person. Upon hearing this, he knew that Sixth Young Master didn't like his siblings at home at all. Thus, he didn't waste time with them and directly pulled Sixth Young Master Zheng into his carriage. On the other side, at the northern city gate, Dou Fengqi was impatient to the extreme. She suddenly swept a glance at the Duan family's seventh Miss, Duan Siren. Seventh Duan, say something. How long are we going to wait like this? Seventh Miss Duan was a 16-year-old girl with a pair of bright, moist eyes on her round, apple-like face. Upon hearing Dou Fengqi's words, she laughed and said, Sister Fengqi, if you're impatient from waiting, then go ask the Crown Princess. When exactly can we set off? Dou Fengqi relented. How could Arbor, who was sitting inside the carriage, not know of the various impatience of the people outside? However, she couldn't be bothered to pay attention to them. She turned to look at Mo Lian, who was staring at her unblinkingly. Lian, do you know why those people from Shuntian Prefecture went to such great lengths to set up this great drama of nation-wrecking witches, wanting to plant it on my head? Mo Lian's heart jolted. Speak. Because their prefecture lord, that lofty Shuntian Prefecture lord, isn't willing for me to lead an easy life. Arbor curled her lips in mockery. They did this not because they wanted her to die, but because they wanted her to be despised by the Crown Prince. It would be best if she was stripped of her title as the Crown Princess, just like how young he was now, being criticized and cursed by the ignorant people. These people had racked their brains and expended all their energy just to make her life miserable. If this life was the same as her previous one, and she was still a weakling, then wouldn't she have to go along with their wishes? A trace of ruthlessness flitted through Mo Lian's eyes, and he abruptly reached out to pull her into his embrace. He pressed his head against her small head and said in a muffled voice, This time, I won't accompany you to the Mystic Beast Forest. I already know where Lu Yizhi is hiding from the Black Cat. I went to clean them up before you came back. Jojo, I want to give you a lifetime of peace. I want to protect you. You won't let those rats, insects, snakes, and scorpions of Shuntian Prefecture crawl around you anymore. Okay. He spoke softly and lowered his head to plant a light kiss on the top of her head. Arbor nuzzled in his embrace and responded softly and cutely, okay. At this time, a commotion came from outside. Dou Fengqi's somewhat high-pitched voice questioned, Why did you come? Arbor lifted the carriage curtain with one hand and absent-mindedly jumped out of the carriage. Little Sixth. Little Sixth Zheng greets Your Highness the Crown Prince and Crown Princess. Ignoring Dou Fengqi's clamor, Little Sixth Zheng turned to salute the two people. The Crown Prince's judgmental gaze swept over his face before indifferently withdrawing. Okay, everyone's here. We can go now. Arbor glanced at everyone and nodded. I have to tell you guys once every day, so you're dreaming. Chapter 1022. The Hong clan's Hong boy knitted his brows and asked, Crown Princess, Sixth Young Master Zheng wants to travel with us. Is there a problem? Arbor glanced at them and said apathetically, Didn't you guys make an agreement with the Great King from the start? The 8 great patrician families will only select 4 contestants and have the Great King choose 2 more people to join the team. The implication was that the Great King had only chosen Little Sixth Zheng, so what else did they want? What was there to be dissatisfied about? Hong Bai and Fan Qiuming's expressions shifted slightly, and they said anxiously, This is the rule that your family head Xiao set himself. Sensing Arbor's cold gaze on him, Hong Bai could only change his words midway. These are indeed Xiao Dongbu's words. The other patrician family's patriarchs didn't agree, so how can his family's words be accurate? If they acknowledged Arbor's words, then at least one of them would have to be eliminated. Wasn't it obvious that another unlucky fellow would have to be kicked out of the team between Hong Boi and the Fan clan's Fan Xiuming? Among the 6 people, they were the 2 weakest and most likely to be kicked out. However, the 2 of them had come bearing the hopes of their clans, so they naturally couldn't allow themselves to be kicked out with just a few words. Presumably, the Crown Princess is bringing 6th Zheng along because the name list that the Great King submitted actually has 7 people, Qin Susu said indifferently. Alright, you guys don't need to worry about this. It's getting late, so let's set off early. The Mystic Beast Forest was located at the intersection of the northeast and was rumored to be 5,000 kilometers long. After leaving the Mo Kingdom, it would take about 2 days to head east, even with the War Eagles leading the way. When they reached the Mystic Beast Forest's periphery, they had to disembark and enter on foot. One reason was to avoid being attacked by beasts at high altitudes, and 2 was because the sky above the Mystic Beast Forest was covered in a layer of gray fog all year round. Basically, everyone would take a detour to fly through the gloomy, quiet, and vast forest. No one would foolishly provoke this forest that surpassed everyone's understanding. The 7 eagles leading the way had been waiting outside the city gate for a long time. The passers-by also looked at them curiously. Some people even stopped to look at the vigorous pitch-black eagles with yearning. Take good care of yourself and act according to your capabilities. Mo Yen reached out to touch her little face and sighed softly with a reluctant look in her eyes. What should he do? He missed her even before they parted ways. This little beauty was really torturous. Xiao Mu patted her chest, indicating for him to set his mind at ease. In the next second, she pursed her lips and smiled at him. Waving her little paw, she turned around and walked out of the city. Mo Yen stared blankly at her departing figure, her mind replaying Jojo's smile. Then, an urgent voice came from afar, Jojo, Jojo. Duan Yu anxiously ran to Mo Yen's side and blinked as he looked around. Where's Jojo? Wow, did I come too late? Did she leave already? Mo Yen harumphed. She left. Arbor was about to mount the War Eagle when he poked his head out from the city gate. Duan Yu? 4th brother. 7th Miss Duan also quickly dismounted the War Eagle and ran to the city gate, looking at him joyfully. Jojo. Duan Yu ran over with a wide grin, completely ignoring 7th Duan's gaze. He directly passed by her and ran to Arbor's side. Chapter 1023. Duan Yu took out a small box and handed it to Arbor. He leaned close to her and whispered, "Here are 10 strengthened core ravaging thunders. Its power is twice as strong as the ones I gave you before. Don't waste so much energy when you're outside. If you encounter those pestering you endlessly all day long, just blast them to death and save yourself the trouble of cleaning up a mess." After he finished speaking, he winked at Arbor darkly. Arbor nodded and very smoothly put away the box into her inner world. "Then I'm leaving. Be good at home and don't fight." Arbor instructed in an extremely good mood as she stretched out her small hand and very naturally patted Duan Yu's dog head. Afterwards, she glanced at the 2 men's exasperated expressions and quickly retracted her gaze before hastily turning to run off. Sigh, to be honest, these 2 people were about the same height, and their figures were equally tall and handsome. One was dressed in a waning black robe with flowing light in his phoenix-like eyes, while the other was dressed in snow-white robes that resembled blooming peach blossoms. Their beauty was earth-shattering. When they stood together as a pair, the scene was so beautiful that it was almost unbearable to look at. Strange, when she was still a baby, she always felt that everyone looked about the same. Especially those youths under the Crown Prince, she simply couldn't tell who was who. In her small worldview, men actually all looked about the same. So in her opinion, Duan Yu, this guy, was especially eccentric and hilarious. As a man, he kept opening and closing his mouth in front of her all day, narcissistically praising his own good looks. He even mistakenly believed that she was merciful to him because of his looks several times. Haha. Was that possible? But now that she had grown up, her aesthetic standards seemed to have slowly returned to normal. Earlier, she actually inexplicably felt that those two peerless evildoers were simply so beautiful that they could be immortalized in a painting for all eternity. It seemed like face blindness could be cured. She reached out to stroke her expressionless little face. Then, a strange thought popped up in her mind. Could facial paralysis be cured? Arbor mounted the war hawk's back with a slightly conflicted mood. The 7 war hawks soared into the sky and turned into 7 small black dots in the blink of an eye, gradually disappearing from Mo Yen and Duan Yu's sight. Arbor immediately activated his defensive shield and placed himself in a relatively vacuum environment, isolating himself from the strong wind outside. Bored, he took out a packet of preserves and popped one into his mouth. Duan Siren, the 7th young miss of the Duan family, who was flying on her other side, couldn't help but pout when she saw this. A trace of sadness flashed across her rosy apple-like face. Hey, you still have the mood to eat? Arbor turned to look at Miss Duan Qi. Duan Yu seemed to dislike his siblings very much. Other than his maternal grandfather, Duan Yu seemed to treat everyone with indifference. Duan Yu clearly saw 7th Duan earlier, but he simply walked past her and didn't even glance at 7th Duan. Therefore, Arbor felt that he didn't need to pay attention to Miss Duan. When Duan Siren saw that she didn't speak, she couldn't help but ask after a while, Crown Princess, you have a good relationship with 4th brother, right? Arbor turned to look at her. Didn't you see it? This guy was asking the obvious, trying to find something to talk about. Didn't he know that speaking was very tiring? She had no choice but to speak so much when dealing with those orioles and swallows. After returning, she was so tired that she collapsed on the bed and fell asleep. Duan Siren hung her head and bit her lips. Then can you help us persuade him? Chapter 1024. There are some things that you should also know. Duan Siren sighed softly and said, his mother is my youngest aunt. She's a normal person without mystic energy. Ever since youngest aunt and someone. Duan Siren said vaguely, gave birth to 4th brother, the 2 of them have always been despised by the clansmen. Thankfully, Grandpa has always doted on the 2 of them. With Grandpa's protection, youngest aunt and 4th brother have been living quite well. Ever since 4th brother's talent was unearthed, Grandpa valued and doted on him even more. Rumors even started circulating in the clan that Grandpa intends to let 4th brother inherit the position of the next patriarch. Arbor swept her an icy glance and said aloofly, so some of you couldn't restrain yourselves and made a move? Right. Because of Grandpa's doting, some of the clansmen targeted him and his mother very much. Duan Siren said quietly, several years ago, when Grandpa was in closed-door cultivation, some of the clansmen took advantage of his absence to injure Aunt and abuse and humiliate her. So in a fit of rage, he abandoned the Duan clan's surname and left the clan with Aunt to find a place to settle down. Now, although Grandpa brought the 2 of them back, his gaze whenever he looked at my clansmen was very frightening. And he also turned a blind eye to me and treated me like a stranger. Arbor harumphed and then tossed a candied fruit into his mouth. You're telling me all this because you want me to persuade him to reconcile with you? At that time, some of the clansmen were young and impetuous and didn't know how to control their temper, so. What a joke. If someone insulted, abused, and beat up my mother, I would have long turned them into ashes and ceased to exist. Now, Duan Yu spared your wretched lives out of consideration for Patriarch Duan. Not only are you not deeply grateful, you even dare to complain. Arbor grumbled, shameless. After saying that, he was no longer willing to waste words with Duan Siren and directly patted the war hawk's head, urging it to quickly fly forward and leaving Duan Siren behind. 7th Miss Duan stared blankly at the girl who left her behind and ran off without saying a word and pinched her fingers in displeasure. Idiot, Arbor muttered under his breath. Seeing him grinning all day long and looking like a carefree fool, and not saying anything, she knew nothing about these things at all. If he had said earlier that Duan Yubing was his enemy, she would have gotten rid of him during the competition. How could she have let him go home with his pathetic life? Sixth Zheng and the rest didn't know what was going on with the two girls. Arbor immediately got far away from Duan Siren and patted the eagle's head. It flapped its wings and rushed to the first position. Do Fengqi suppressed a trace of cold anger in her eyes. He rode his war eagle to Duan 7's side and asked casually, "What's wrong, Duan 7? Did you have a conflict with the crown princess?" "It's nothing." Duan Qi shook his head. He didn't want to talk too much. He shouted softly and let the war eagle fly forward. They flew like this for nearly 2 days, only occasionally eating and drinking to relieve themselves. War Eagle's stamina was about to be overdrawn. In any case, they weren't far from the small adventurer base on the outskirts of the Mystic Beast Forest. It would only take 5 minutes to walk from here. However, just as everyone was about to land, another eagle team appeared on the horizon. Chapter 1025. The leading eagle didn't allow for any explanation as it fiercely rammed into Sixth Zheng's eagle. Unhurried, little Sixth Zheng controlled the defensive barrier with one hand and unsheathed his long sword with the other, attacking without any explanation. What kind of joke was this? Someone was directly charging at him. Could it be that he was a herbivore? His mystic energy surged forward, stirring up clanging sounds in the air. The newcomer sat steadily on the eagle's back and sneered at little Sixth Zheng. With a wave of his hand, the 4 or 5 eagles behind him screeched and pounced at little Sixth Zheng with lightning speed, wanting to tear him apart. Where did this fool come from, provoking without saying a word? Arbor was enraged, and he directly stood up from the eagle's back, shouting angrily, "Are you all fools? You're not moving even when you're being bullied? Are you waiting to get rid of your teammates before it's your turn?" Qin Susu was the first to react. Patting the eagle's back, she flew to little Sixth Zheng's side and drew her sword, shooting out a mystic light. "Crown Princess, it's those guys from the Eastern Ing Nation." The Eastern Ing Nation? How could Arbor possibly know them? Without saying a word, she threw a punch at an approaching eagle, sending it flying back more than 10 steps. If the Eastern Ing Nation man on the eagle's back hadn't been tightly hugging the eagle's neck, he would probably have already fallen off and died on the spot. His complexion was pale, and he was so angry that he screeched, "Damn Northern Mo people, you're so gutsy. You dare to be so brazen and provoke us in our eastern region." Apart from Do Fengqi, the 6 people all moved to confront the Eastern Ing Nation. The 6 people and 6 war eagles lined up in a row. The other side was led by 2 people, followed by 5 or 6 attendants. Among the 2 leaders, one of them was a small man with an ordinary face. He was taciturn and didn't make much noise. The one who was jumping up and down and hooting the most was the other person, who was currently wantonly cursing Northern Mo. Xiao Mu originally thought that the taciturn man was considered short, but she didn't expect that the other fool was even more ridiculously short. He was about the height of an 11 or 12-year-old child. Even though he was standing high and mighty on the eagle's back, he was still a short winter melon. "Shut up." Arbor was annoyed by his noisy chatter. He raised his hand and threw out a row of concealed weapons. 5 or 6 attendants heard the sound of something breaking through the air and couldn't help but be shocked. They hurriedly rushed forward to block in front of their master. One of the attendants was hit by a hidden weapon and fell off the eagle's back. Even if he didn't die, he would be half dead. "Ah! You damned woman!" The short man shouted angrily. Standing on the eagle's back, he waved his hands and feet as if he was doing an awkward dance. At this time, the short wintermelon subordinate lowered his voice and said a few words to the man. The short wintermelon immediately looked at Arbor with bright eyes. There was a trace of indescribable excitement in his pair of dim yellow eyes. "You're Northern Prince Mo's consort. Who I am has nothing to do with you." Arbor bluntly stabbed him. Are you qualified to ask? You. The short winter melon was so angry that his face turned ashen. Standing on the eagle's back, he crossed his arms and said in a lofty tone, seeing that you're still a young woman, I won't bicker with you. Come to my side immediately. Now. Northern Prince Mo's consort, I am Easterning Nation's crown prince. I now allow you to enter my palace and become my woman. I cannot disdain you, but you have to show me your loyalty. Was this person an idiot? Chapter 1026. Even though Fengqi had an incredulous expression as she glared at that Easterning Kingdom short winter melon who was talking to himself. Pfft. Qin Susu snickered rudely, which then developed into a belly laugh. Are you sure you're not here to amuse yourself? Easterning Kingdom's crown prince was such an idiot. No wonder Easterning Kingdom had been beaten to a small coastal island by Northern Amo and hadn't dared to move for so many years. What are you laughing at? As if sensing Qin Susu's mockery, the Easterning Kingdom's crown prince, that short winter melon with a flat nose and a round face who really didn't pass muster, glowered at Qin Susu. Don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Let me tell you. Even if I can't deal with all of you now, once we enter the mystic realm, heh heh. Humph. Kill him, Arbor berated impatiently. Where did this idiot come from? He wasn't even willing to waste words with him. Several ghostly figures abruptly appeared in midair. Lightning and several other hidden guards directly attacked without a word, grabbing at the short winter melon's neck. Ah! The short winter melon cried out in shock, as if unable to react to the fact that the crown princess actually had so many hidden guards by her side. He angrily shrieked, You're breaking the rules. How can you bring so many people? Your Northern Amo kingdom only has 6 quotas to enter the mystic realm at most. Everyone stared at him like they were looking at an idiot. You idiot, why do you view the world so differently? Are we in the mystic realm right now? We haven't even entered the mystic beast forest yet. Didn't you also bring a group of attendants? Why can't the Grand Northern Prince Mo, consort, bring people? Even though Fengqi couldn't resist bursting into laughter. Oh my! Do all Easterning Kingdom's people have this kind of IQ? Then don't embarrass yourselves by entering the mystic realm. Because it's useless even if you enter. With this kind of IQ of a 3.5-year-old, I'm afraid you'll be courting death if you enter. Stop! The Easterning Kingdom's leader who had been silent all this time finally spoke up. Third brother, save me. Third brother. The crown prince was so scared that he pissed his pants. He patted the eagle under his butt and ran to that person. The silent third prince-ing Fa frowned coldly. He dodged Arbor's pouncing body and rode the black hawk to Arbor and the others. He cupped his hands in greeting and said in a polite manner, ever since the crown prince was overly frightened a few years ago, he would occasionally become delirious. Please forgive him. Qin Susu and the others couldn't help but burst out laughing again. Looks like his brain isn't working well. Little Sixth Zheng shook his head solemnly, and he turned to say to Arbor, Miss Chiao, since the other party has a mental problem, then let's not bicker with him, okay? Xiao Mu nodded nonchalantly on the surface, but she spat out icily, slap her. Pa! Lightning, who was closest to the crown prince, slapped the crown prince's face without saying a word. Ah! Caught off guard, the crown prince staggered and fell down from the Black Hawk's back. The third prince-ing Fa hastily turned the Black Hawk's head and rushed up to catch the crown prince. Just as he turned his head and was about to angrily reprimand him, he saw a black streak of light shoot straight at the person in his hands. Cold sweat immediately broke out all over his body, and the third prince-ing Fa hastily wanted to throw the crown prince behind him. But no sooner said than done, Arbor's figure flitted across the sky like a ghost, arriving beside the 2 Easterning Kingdom's princes in the blink of an eye. Chapter 1027. The Vajra talismans in her hands were as sturdy as iron, and she directly grabbed the heads of the two black eagles and snapped them. Eldest Crown Prince, Third Crown Prince. The two crown princes of the Eastern Kingdom also fell to the ground along with the eagle heads. Arbor patted her two small hands that were as white as jade and swept a cold glance over the fallen Eastern people. Such karma is due for shooting off your mouth. Little Sixth Zheng's mouth silently twitched. That's right. With the crown princess's vengeful personality, that Eastern Kingdom's eldest crown prince naturally had to be half dead for teasing her with such filthy words. It's said that the Eastern Kingdom previously had 3 crown princes. The second crown prince's mother is the queen and has the strongest backing. However, he was secretly poisoned in a battle a year ago, Duan Siren said. Arbor pursed her small lips noncommittally. She wasn't interested in knowing this. She pressed the warhawk to land on her own and Arbor looked around. Her mood improved slightly when she didn't see that group of Eastern Kingdom people discussed her. Let's go. Little Sixth Zheng and the others followed her to her side. After resting here for a while, the warhawks would naturally return to Northern Mo in a well-trained manner, so they didn't need to worry about this. The place they were currently at was one of the only 2 adventurer bases in the entire Mystic Beast Forest within a radius of 5,000 kilometers. The other adventurer base had to cross the Mystic Beast Forest tens of thousands of kilometers and was located near the western region. They definitely couldn't go there at the moment. Arbor's group walked to the entrance of the adventurer base and could see a row of people vigilantly patrolling back and forth at the entrance from afar. There were also 4 to 5 base guards keeping watch in the battle towers on both sides. Just as Arbor's group reached the entrance, they were politely stopped. Guests from afar, if you wish to enter our adventurer base, you must first register and pay a certain fee. Arbor's group nodded in understanding. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. There was nothing much to say about this, so they naturally sent someone to register and pay the fee. Fan Xiuming had the air of a scholar, so everyone sent him to register and negotiate. Not long after, Fan Xiuming ran over with a troubled expression. He rubbed his hands and said, everyone has to pay a dough of food to register. A duel? Fuck, what kind of lousy adventurer's base is this? They're asking for too much. A dough of grain contained 10 liters of grain, which was enough to feed an ordinary family for a month. This was just an adventurer's base. They would only be resting for 2 nights at most. To have to pay so much, it was simply like eating people whole and not spitting out their bones. Little Sixth, I'll pay for you. After throwing down this sentence, Xiaomu followed after the beaming base guide. What kind of better treatment? If Miss can afford 3 dough of food, you can stay in a luxurious house for free for 3 days. Oh. Miss, this way. You can register here. The guide felt that he had been led astray by Arbor. He smiled and gestured for them to enter. In the next second, a small, bouncy fist landed on his chubby face with a bang. Did this old fellow take her for a fool? Did she look like she was easy to be slaughtered? A moment later, after a bout of bone and muscle relaxation, the guide reluctantly handled the free check-in procedures for this little devil with a sullen face. Arbor held the house card and walked briskly to Lil Six Zheng. Lil Six, let's go. What about us? Pay for it yourself. Arbor called Lil Six and left without looking back. Chapter 1028. Among the leading figures of the kingdoms in the world, this old great king of the Eastern Kingdom was absolutely an oddity. Even if you randomly picked out an unreliable great king from other kingdoms, they wouldn't be like him. The Eastern king had more than a dozen sons and allowed them to fight for the crown prince position every day. Today, one was poisoned to death, and tomorrow, another was assassinated. He didn't mind making a fuss. Yet, the old great king of the Eastern Kingdom was unperturbed from beginning to end, smiling as he watched the surging winds and clouds while sitting in the audience. This battle for the crown prince position lasted as long as 7 to 8 years. During this time, the old king of the Eastern Kingdom was pincered by Northern Mo, Northern Wei, and Southern Bailey and was forced to settle down on an island. This wasn't the end of it. His sons simply didn't think of going out to expand their territory or recover their lost territory. They continued to set their sights on that shrinking cake in the country and fought until their heads were broken and blood flowed as they fought for the crown prince position. At the end of the battle, this oddball old king once again made a shocking move. All the sons who had survived the internal strife were arranged according to their ages, and all of them were conferred the title of crown prince. Actually, this succession of crown princes was the same whether they were conferred or not. But the crown princes of the Eastern Kingdom were agitated. Every one of them felt that they were only half a step away from that throne. Even if they were currently residing on an island the size of a sesame seed, that was freaking the future great king, okay. The second crown prince of the Eastern Kingdom died last year, so there were only 7 crown princes left. Although the eldest crown prince, Jian, wasn't very bright, he had a strong wife to deal with things for him. In addition, his strength as a level 9 mystic cultivator wasn't considered weak. Thus, he could be considered one of the oldest among the crown princes. The third crown prince, Fa, was a taciturn and reticent person with a level 7 cultivation. His mother's status wasn't high, so he didn't have the support of his maternal family. He had always relied on the eldest crown prince to give him advice, so he was considered the eldest crown prince's little tail. These two people fell from a high altitude just now. Fortunately, the royal guards risked their lives to protect them. After losing 2 royal guards, the 2 unlucky fellows were covered in heavy wounds and battered and exhausted as they rushed to the adventurer base ahead. It just so happened that Arbor and 6th Zheng had already gone in, while the others were still discussing with the adventurer base's junior manager whether or not they could reduce the amount of food. Therefore, when the two sides met, it was as if they were fighting cocks, swords drawn and ready for battle. Seeing that another fight was about to break out at the entrance of the base, the junior manager of the base shouted angrily and hurriedly ordered the guards to separate the two parties. Who dares to start a fight at the entrance of the adventurer base? No matter who it was. If you violate the rules of the base, you will be sent away immediately. What kind of joke was this? Did they think that this was a large-scale fortification in the city? There were tens of thousands of soldiers guarding the city, and there were even city towers that were over 100 zhang tall. There were ample defensive items, enough to block all attacks. Their poor little adventurer's stronghold didn't have anything. The tower in front of the door, the surrounding defensive walls, and the defensive trenches had been built over the past few years by relying entirely on manpower. In order to improve the defense of the small base, the commander had spent a lot of effort. Once there was a huge commotion, it would first attract the wandering zombies nearby, and second, there was a high possibility of triggering a terrifying beast tide. That wasn't a joke. 10 years ago, this small base had already been attacked by a beast tide. Chapter 1029. 10 years ago was also the last time the Mystic Beast Forest Secret Realm opened. At that time, 2 teams courting disaster started fighting at the entrance of the base. The loud noise caused the entire Mystic Beast Forest's periphery to become restless. In the end, the small adventurer base was nearly trampled to the ground by the beast tide, and countless innocent adventurers were killed or injured. Many young people from various countries who came to participate in the competition also lost their lives in this beast tide. Rebuilding the base would consume a large amount of time and money. No matter who it was, they wouldn't be able to bear such a loss. Everyone must have come for the Mystic Beast Forest Secret Realm, right? Since that's the case, it's better to resolve any conflicts you have in the Secret Realm. At that time, we won't be able to do anything about it. The base's junior manager nodded in understanding. Since you've come to our small base, then do everything according to our rules. If you insist on having a conflict in our base, then I'm sorry. According to the rules our commander has issued, I must ask you to leave. Humph. The eldest crown prince, Ing Jian, snorted angrily. He took out a large bag of grain from his inner world and tossed it to the junior manager. Arrange a spacious residence for us. Whoever had the grain was his father. The junior manager's eyes immediately lit up, and he bowed and nodded repeatedly in acknowledgement. He specially ordered one of his subordinates to lead Ing Jian's group to a place to stay. Afterward, he shifted his gaze back to Fan Qiuming and the others, causing them to blush slightly. The junior manager's wolf-like gaze clearly seemed to be looking at a few paupers who couldn't afford to pay. To put it bluntly, it wasn't that they couldn't afford to pay this bit of grain, they just felt like they were losing out. They were just resting in this small base for a day or two, but they had to hand over enough grain to feed their entire family for a month. This was simply unacceptable. Qin Susu's mouth twitched. She took out her share from her inner world and tossed it to the junior manager. All right, pay it all. Have the manager arrange a place for us to stay together. They had rushed here covered in dust. In any case, they had to get a good night's sleep first and adjust their states before entering the forest in high spirits. After the base manager received the fee, he immediately put on an amiable expression and ordered people to take them to Find Arbor and 6th Zheng. Duan Siren's footsteps paused as she stared at the steward's slightly swollen eyes and asked, "Just now, one of us took you there. Did she pay the fee?" The steward's expression changed slightly. He nodded hurriedly and said impatiently, "Why are you asking so much? Of course, you can only enter after paying the fee. All right, hurry up and go in." However, only he knew that at this moment, his heart was silently dripping tears of blood and flowing like a river. Not only did the girl give him a good thrashing, but she also forced a poison pill on him. If it wasn't for the poison that had completely controlled him, he would have already called the base's guards over and captured that savage girl. Duan Siren frowned and walked into the base with the others. After a while, she said, "I think the crown princess must not have paid." "I think so too." Everyone nodded in agreement. "Look at that fatty's bare appearance. He bullies the weak and fears the strong. His eyes are still swollen. He must have been beaten up by the crown princess." Dou Fengqi couldn't help but get angry. "We're all on the same team. Since she took care of the base's damn fatty and successfully waived her and little 6th Zheng's fee, why didn't she just waive the fee for us as well?" Chapter 1030. Qin Susu snickered. Turning back to sweep a glance at Dou Fengqi, she curled her thin lips mockingly and said with a smile, "Miss Dou really is quite amusing. Don't say something about being in the same team being so high and mighty. Of the people who can enter the mystic realm now, who doesn't have the goal of going there to reap benefits? Could it be that when you enter the mystic realm, you'll still humbly give anything good to the crown princess when you see it?" After saying this, she walked forward without even looking back, coldly saying, "I advise you all to behave yourselves and not look for trouble when there's nothing to do. Our team is only formed temporarily, and we can go our separate ways anytime and anywhere for our own benefits. Teammates, ha! What was the point of saying it so nicely? How could she not be aware of the goal this team was formed for? A bunch of fools and idiots. It wasn't like they hadn't experienced the crown princess's methods before. Didn't they all see it on the day of the competition? Yet they still dared to boast shamelessly and rush over to provoke her like this. They really were some people who didn't care for their lives." Dou Fengqi was so angry that she laughed instead. Glaring at Qin Susu's departing figure, she stomped her feet. "This woman from the Qin estate has quite the temper. Do you know where she's from? I've never seen her before, but she suddenly popped up and claimed to be the foster sister of 2 young masters from the Qin estate. Isn't this hilarious?" Duan Siren didn't say much, but her eyes contained traces of faint melancholy on her round apple-like face. "All right. Stop talking." Hong Bai irritably interrupted Dou Fengqi's words. "Are you all still going to rest?" Everyone angrily rushed to the accommodations arranged by the manager. That manager was also a shrewd person. Knowing that their team was split into two groups when they moved into the base, he was especially happy to watch them dogfight. Thus, he simply arranged for the 7 of them to stay in an independent courtyard and let them bicker with each other as they pleased. When Dou Fengqi and the others arrived, Arbor and little Sixth Zheng just happened to be leaving. The two swept them an indifferent glance, nodded slightly, and then walked out the door. "Hey, how are the rooms allocated?" Dou Fengqi couldn't help but angrily ask. From the looks of it, little Sixth Zheng and Arbor, who had arrived first, had freaking picked their own rooms first and even locked their rooms when they left. "We've all paid for it. A dough of grain. Why did they have to live in such a shabby house? There were only 4 rooms. How am I supposed to live here?" "All right, enough with the nonsense," Qin Susu said in annoyance. "You, me, and Duan Qi will share a room. The Fan clan's kid and the Hong clan's kid would share a room and make do with each other for a night or 2. It's already good enough that we have a house to stay in. Once we enter the forest, we'll be exposed to the wind and the sun every day. I don't even know if we can have a good night's sleep. Why should the 3 of us share a room? She only has 1 room each." Dou Fengqi shouted. "Qin Susu, right? Is there something wrong with your brain? Or do you like Miss Chiao? I see that you've been putting in good words for her the whole way." Qin Susu was currently dressed in black men's clothing. Her long hair was tied up high, revealing her delicate and round forehead. It looked very energetic, and it was hard to tell if it was a man or a woman. Hearing this, the corners of her mouth couldn't help but twitch. She just didn't want to provoke that troublesome crown princess and cause less trouble, but she didn't expect her words to be misinterpreted as a matter of sexual orientation. "When we enter the Mystic Beast Forest, we interact as teammates. There's no distinction between the crown princess and the commoners," Dou Fengqi prattled. "Qin Susu, you and I will share a room." Arbor directly threw the key to Qin Susu and turned to leave with Sixth Zheng. Chapter 1031. This tiny adventurer base might be small, but it had everything. There was a small bazaar outside. Compared to the cold and cheerless city, the bazaar here was much more lively. There were all sorts of things for sale, but most of them were all kinds of medicines and medicinal herbs obtained nearby. And in the periphery of the Mystic Beast Forest, low-grade medicinal herbs that could be seen everywhere were basically things that no one cared about or wanted to buy. However, Arbor's trip today was for low-grade and mid-grade medicinal herbs. She came to the bazaar to issue the mission of collecting low-grade and mid-grade medicinal herbs. She knew that this adventurer base definitely had a place specifically for issuing missions. Previously, in Teacher Long Chuyun's medicinal garden of 20 mu, the majority of the medicinal herbs left for her were black-grade and above precious. And the medicinal herbs that the white snakelet had stolen from who knew where were also mostly rare medicinal herbs. Thus, it could be said that she now had a fairly complete collection of black-grade, earth-grade, and heaven-grade spirit flowers and herbs. She even had as many as a dozen kinds of divine-grade medicinal herbs, but she was only missing some ordinary low-grade and mid-grade medicinal herbs. Before this, she had mostly planted mid-grade and high-grade medicinal herbs in her own medicinal field, and there weren't many low-grade medicinal herbs at all. To tell the truth, she was too lazy to pick those low-grade and mid-grade medicinal herbs that were relatively easy to raise. She would usually just casually buy a few stalks when she strolled around a pharmacy. Now that she was in the Mystic Beast Forest, she planned to replenish all the low-grade and mid-grade medicinal herbs that she previously lacked. That way, when she refined pills in the future, she wouldn't be dumbfounded by the lack of basic medicinal herbs. This place was close to the forest, so there were all kinds of low-grade medicinal herbs. This mission definitely wouldn't be difficult, and there were plenty of people vying to take it on. Burly mercenaries carrying axes, hammers, and large sabers, walking seductively, and prostitutes throwing flirtatious glances everywhere could be seen practically everywhere in the bazaar. It was extremely rare to see a handsome young master like Sixth Zheng and an icy and peerlessly beautiful little stoic like Arbor in the bazaar. Thus, when the two appeared, they attracted a lot of attention. The two casually found a stall owner to inquire about the location of the mission issuance center. That stall owner immediately enthusiastically pointed ahead for them. There is. Walk 50 meters forward. Look, that stall with the red sail is right there. Arbor's mouth twitched as he glanced at the shabby stall. Sure enough, there were more people crowding around that stall than anywhere else. It was really a mission distribution center. The stall owner seemed to have noticed her disdain and hurriedly laughed. We'll keep everything simple, little girl. If you want to issue a mission, you can just go there. After thanking him, Xiao Mu and little Sixth Zheng arrived at the mission issuance center, one after another. Just as he approached the shabby stall, he heard a familiar roar. Do you know the rules? This is the mission that we revealed first, okay? What right do you have to interfere? Ha! You're just a small team of outsiders. TSK, you only have 8 or 9 useless people. You want to take on a level 3 mission? Are you tired of living? I'm doing this for the sake of your lives. That's why I'm helping you. What are you roaring for? Haven't you heard of our Proud Hawk squad? Then hurry up and ask around in this base. Who doesn't know that our Proud Hawk squad has already been gloriously promoted to a level 3 special operations team? Arbor's eyes lit up, and she rushed up to the tall fatty whose face was flushed red and called out crisply, "Hello, Captain." Chapter 1032. Everyone turned to look at her, dumbfounded. However, Xiao Mu's gaze only landed on the faces of huge bear squads Gao Sheng and company. She simply didn't notice that the person who was arguing with Gao Sheng was looking at her with glowing eyes, his saliva about to overflow uncontrollably. Hey, aren't you that one? The little girl who saved us at the north gate of Guanlan City. Vice Captain Hua Gu had a good memory and recognized Arbor at a glance. The main reason was that their encounter that day had been a little frightening and left a deep impression on them. When a group of zombies was crushing their huge bear squad from behind, the little girl suddenly appeared and threw out 2 firearms as if she had the help of the gods, killing the zombies on the spot. Arbor nodded and looked at Hua Gu. Vice Captain. A young member of the huge bear squad was so excited that his face turned red. Captain, I told you the little girl knew us. Who would have thought that the huge bear squad's reputation had spread so far and wide? Any random young and beautiful girl who came out of nowhere could call out their captains and vice captains' identities. Just how much did she worship their huge bear squad? The young member thought to himself complacently. Captain Gao Sheng unexpectedly slapped the back of his head, and Gao Sheng grumpily pulled him to the side. He nodded at Xiao Mu and said with a smile, "What a coincidence, little miss. You left after saving us in Guanlan City that day. We didn't even have time to thank you." "No need to thank me." Arbor shook his head. "It was nothing." "Captain, is the huge bear squad also here for a mission?" Yes. Gao Sheng suddenly thought of something and turned around to roar at the Proud Hawk squad. "You! Hurry up and give us back our mission." The captain of the Proud Hawk squad was staring at Arbor in a semi-infatuated state. He couldn't hear Gao Sheng's reprimand. His old, weather-beaten face revealed a lustful expression as he stared at Arbor with shining eyes. After a while, he gulped and said, "Little girl, are you from Gao Sheng's squad?" "Oh my, what's the point of staying in such a lousy squad with less than 10 people? Why don't you join our Proud Hawk squad? Our Proud Hawk squad has just been promoted to a 3rd-grade squad. You trashy level 3 squad leader, what are you talking about in front of me? If you interrupt again, I'll cut off your tongue." Arbor roared at the man. "Can't you see I'm talking to the captain? How rude." The smile on the Proud Hawk squad's captain's face froze. Uncle Gao Sheng, on the other hand, was flattered. It was simply baffling. Where did this little girl's strange affinity come from? Could it be that this was the so-called fate that people talked about? You. The captain of the Proud Hawk Squad glared at Xiao Mu before swallowing his anger and suppressing his belly full of anger. He put on a smiling face and said, Okay, you tell him. We'll talk about our business after you're done. Who's us with you? Sixth Zheng snapped at the captain of the Proud Hawk Squad. What an ignorant man. Scram to wherever it was cool. Captain. I have a mission to issue. Will our huge bear squad accept it? Arbor's eyes twinkled as he looked at the tall, fat uncle, and asked expectantly. How could the tall, fat uncle have the heart to refuse? He inexplicably nodded and agreed. Sure. I don't know what the mission is, but as long as our huge bear squad can do it, we definitely won't refuse. It's definitely a mission that you can do. Don't worry. Chapter 1033. Thud thud thud. Arbor walked to the front of the Mission Issuance Center stall and said to the person in charge, I want to issue a mission only for huge bear squad members to accept. I'll give you double the commission. Sure. How could the person in charge of the mission center not know Arbor's identity? He nodded and said with a smile, Young lady, we can also use mystic currency for transactions here. Arbor took out 10 pieces of mid-grade mystic currency from her inner world and placed them in front of the person in charge. Is this enough? The person in charge's eyes lit up, and he hurriedly nodded. Enough. Normally, even if it was a level 5 mission, they only needed to pay 5 mid-grade mystic currency as commission. Now that Arbor gave 10 pieces, it was simply more than enough. The mission I want to issue is to help me find all kinds of mid-grade and low-grade medicinal herbs within a month. I want 100 stocks of each type. The more varieties, the better. As long as the rhizome is more or less complete, I'll pay 1 low-grade mystic currency for each stock. There's no upper limit. What? Everyone present, including the huge bear squad members, looked dumbfoundedly at this heroic little sister in front of them. They simply couldn't use words to express their current feelings, okay? How many medicinal herbs could the huge bear squad dig up in the vast and boundless mystic beast forest's periphery in a month? Even 10,000 stalks of medicinal herbs was a small number, okay? If they could dig up 100,000 stalks, then they would have to pay 100,000 low-grade mystic currency. Fuck, the purchasing power of 100,000 low-grade mystic currency was very astonishing, okay? Furthermore, they might be able to dig up even more medicinal herbs because that young lady said that she didn't leave an upper limit for them. The more, the better. The young lady looked beautiful, fair, and clean, but she was actually an idiot. Pfft, a mocking laugh came from the side. The one who spoke was a flirtatious woman. Young lady, don't be so full of yourself. Are you teasing people? Do you know the price of mid-grade and low-grade medicinal herbs in this bazaar? 5 mid-grade medicinal herbs are 1 low-grade mystic currency. As for low-grade medicinal herbs, no one in this bazaar needs to buy them. Because in such a large mystic beast forest, you could casually find a dozen low-grade medicinal herbs with a single step. Could they be worth money? It was only a cabbage price. Arbor ignored her. He turned his head, stood on his tiptoes, raised his small hand, and patted the tall fatty's shoulder twice. Don't worry, go ahead and dig. I'll take as much as you dig. I have money, I'll give you 10,000 cultivation coins as a deposit first. As he spoke, he took out a money pouch containing 10,000 low-grade profound coins from his inner world and placed it in the hands of the dumbfounded Captain Gao. She didn't plan to grow those low-end medicinal herbs on Paradise Planet at all. Therefore, it didn't matter how many he collected. When the time came, it would not go bad even if it was thrown into the inner world. When it was needed, it could be used at any time. It would save the trouble of asking Little Tree to plant and harvest it. Even the person in charge of the mission distribution center was somewhat jealous of the giant bear squad's dog's hit luck. He must have stepped on dog shit when he went out today, right? Could this little girl be Gao Sheng's relative? Everyone looked at the dumbfounded Captain Gao with a look that said, Gao Sheng, are you crazy? Brat, you have such a rich relative, yet you still come out all day to snatch business from them. Don't you have any shame? No, little girl, are you sure you want to take as much as you can? Gao Sheng felt that his throat was dry, and his voice was trembling. Fragmented sleep. Chapter 1034. Arbor nodded vigorously. Captain Gao held the 10,000 mystic coins in his hand and felt that they were scalding hot. He said embarrassedly, actually, you don't have to pay a deposit. Moreover, young lady, the purchase price you offered is really too high. A low-grade medicinal herb was actually given a low-grade profound coin. Just how rich was this person? It's fine. You guys go ahead and harvest. We'll meet here in a month, and I'll give you the remaining mystic coins. Alright. Captain Gao nodded vigorously and said with a smile, young lady, then we'll go back and prepare the tools for harvesting the herbs. We'll take our leave now. Arbor nodded slightly. Without waiting for them to take 2 steps, her eyes flashed, and she called out to them again. Captain. The little fellow called out to Captain Gao crisply and ran to Captain Gao's side with small steps. She looked up at him and said, don't casually give your captain's position to others in the future. Especially Fan Chioha, a wild wolf in human skin. If she gave the captain's position to Fan Chioha, he would only lead everyone step by step into the abyss of death. Perhaps this was Fan Chioha's ultimate goal. In her previous life, when she joined the huge bear squad, she was only a little over 16 years old. She had been with the huge bear squad for a full 3 years and watched the 19 members of the huge bear squad perish one by one. In the end, only she and Fan Chioha were left. Now that she thought about it, she suddenly realized that this was probably not only caused by the vile environment, but also by Fan Chioha's deliberate indulgence. Arbor subconsciously clenched her fists tightly. Fan Chioha, this scum. Once she returned to the capital, she would definitely find some time to meet him. When Captain Gao heard the young lady's brainless words, he was slightly startled. Then, he smiled foolishly and rubbed the back of his head. All right. I, old Gao, have nothing but hot blood. My teammates are my family, and I will definitely lead them well. Captain. Everyone in the huge bear squad also cheered and shouted. Hey. Arbor pursed her lips and waved at a 16 or 17-year-old girl in the squad. Sister Gu, come quickly. I have something good for you. Ah. How did this young lady, who was as pretty as a fairy in a painting, know that her name was Sister Gu? Could it be, as Ah Gong said, that this girl was a super fan of their bear squad? The huge bear squad was actually so famous in the entire Sikong planet. The little girl called Sister Gu walked to Arbor's side with a confused expression. Arbor held her rough little hand and placed a heavy cloth bag in her hands. Sister Gu, eating sweet potatoes every day is actually pretty good. It's just that you get sick of it after eating too much. Take it and eat it. I'll give you guys a deposit so that the captain can buy you some things you need. Don't treat yourselves too badly. Oh, right. Arbor didn't care about the girl's stunned look. He directly took out 2 boxes of ointment from his pocket and stuffed them into her hands. He whispered to her, these 2 boxes of beauty ointment were made by me personally. It's most suitable for people like us who run around outside all day, exposed to the elements. It can improve the quality of your skin very well. Remember to apply it once every night. In less than 10 days, your skin will be like mine. Really? Sister Gu widened her eyes in shock, and she subconsciously reached out to touch her dry skin. Emichem. You don't have to apply too much. A small spoonful every day is enough. Chapter 1035. These 2 boxes of ointment can be used for 2 months. I'll give you more after you finish using them. Sister Ge's big eyes shone with joy. Heavens, could this girl really be a little fairy that fell from the sky? Otherwise, how would she know that she was worried about her rough face every day? Let me tell you, this beauty cream isn't worth much. Just use it as much as you want. For a young girl like you, as long as you pay attention to it a little bit, your skin will immediately improve. Sister Gu acted as if she had seen a relative as she grabbed Arbor's hand and chattered, Aya, it's great that I met you. Let me tell you, every time I look in the mirror these days, I'm worried to death. Every day, I have to go on missions and my skin is dry and dark. After recuperating for a while, I have to go on the road again. Last time, I heard that the Adventurers Auction House sold a sky-high skin lotion, but that thing is really too expensive. How can I afford it? What skin lotion? It's useless, let me tell you. Also, don't rub things on your face all day long. Many skin care products with sky-high prices, such as skin care products, contain toxins that have not been removed. Once you use it, your skin will get worse. My 2 boxes of beauty cream are completely handmade. I guarantee that they will be useful for you. Chirp chirp dot chirp chirp dot. When the 2 girls talked about skin care, it was as if they had met a bosom friend for 800 years. Once they started chatting, there was no end to it. When the surrounding men saw this, their eyes couldn't help but stare blankly as the corners of their mouths twitched. What was this situation? Weren't they issuing missions and accepting missions? Why did the atmosphere change so suddenly? The 2 girls actually ran to the side to talk about beauty. It had nothing to do with the mission, okay. Moreover, this little girl was clearly 2 or 3 years younger than Sister Gu, but she spoke like an elder and said, you young ladies. The 2 girls exchanged their names and chatted for a while before reluctantly parting ways. When Sister Gu followed Captain Gao and the others to her temporary residence, she was still praising Miss Chiao along the way, saying that she regretted not meeting her earlier. The fat Auntie Hua Gu couldn't help but laugh, I think so too. The 2 of you talked about it in just 3 sentences. It's as if he has endless things to say. If Captain Gao hadn't told Sis Gu that it was getting late and that they should go back to rest and prepare the tools for tomorrow's trip into the forest, Sis Gu would have had to talk to Arbor again. Sister Gu, look at what the little girl gave you. On the other side, the young man, Ah Gong, moved closer to Sister Gu and asked curiously. Only then did Sis Gu lower her head to look at the heavy bag in her hand. She opened the bag, and a few heads leaned over to take a look. Wow! Beef, pork, chicken drumsticks. So much meat. Sister Gu cheered and was about to fly up. Oh my god! Miss Chiao must be a fairy sent down by the heavens to save her. Otherwise, how would she know that she had been nagging about wanting to eat meat all day long, hoping for the stars and the moon for a long time? That was because he had been eating sweet potatoes every day. His mouth was so bland. Arbor walked on the road with a faint smile on her face. She didn't even realize that she was in a good mood. Her memories couldn't help but drift further and further away. An old, dusky scene appeared in front of her eyes. The forest was surrounded by an aura of death. Chapter 1036. It had already been 12 years since zombies descended into the world. The various major fortifications in her previous life were simply not as complete as they were in this life. In today's major fortifications, one could see unmutated flowers, plants, and trees, as well as a trace of human vitality. However, in her previous life, there was a deathly aura everywhere, and not a trace of green life could be seen. All 4 seasons fell into midwinter, and the air was filled with a dusky fog. Everything was withered as far as the eye could see. Sister Gu, who was in her early 20s, looked like a woman in her 40s due to being exposed to the elements for a long time. Due to various reasons, there were only 9 people left in Huge Bear Squad: Fan Chioha, Arbor, Little Sixth Zheng, Captain Gao, Sister Gu, Big Bao, Flower Mushroom, an elderly apothecary known as Mr. Zhong, and a taciturn demonic cultivator named A.E. In fact, Arbor didn't have any prejudice against demonic cultivators because this demonic cultivator named A.E. had helped her a lot in her previous life. He had even sacrificed himself heroically in order to save Captain Gao later on. Unlike the rest of the world, she didn't fear demonic cultivators or hate them. However, the demonic cultivators she encountered in this life always made her feel unhappy. At this moment, the 9 people were sitting in front of the fire. Some were facing the sky, gazing at the pitch-black sky without a single star. Some were staring impatiently at a pot of steaming clear soup. Without exception, the 9 people were all dressed in rags. Their hair was tied up, and their faces and bodies were covered in dust. If they were thrown onto the streets, no one would believe them if they said they weren't beggars. Little Sixth ran to more than a dozen places today, but he couldn't find a clean water source. If this continues, we'll run out of water soon, Captain Gao announced to everyone with a heavy expression. The sweet potatoes are only enough to eat for about 2 more days. Sister Ji's small hand that was poking the sweet potatoes paused, and she shouted indignantly, when these suffocating days come to an end, all the damn zombies will disappear. When I have money, I must buy 10 big chicken drumsticks and have a hearty meal. It was too sullen. Eating sweet potatoes with clear soup every day made Sister Gu feel as if she hadn't eaten a good meal of meat for nearly 10 years. Ha! Ah Gong chuckled. He put his hands behind his head and looked at the starless night. He asked in confusion, will there be such a day? Definitely. Jojo, what do you want to do the most if the chaos ends? Fan Xiuhe turned his head with a smile and asked her. I want to plant a lot of flowers and plants in my garden, as well as a few saplings, and watch them grow. Arbor held his chin and said softly, it's been a long time since I've seen the red and green flowers. This gloomy world was simply too despairing. It was as if everything in front of him had been cut off, and he couldn't see a trace of hope. The world was like a mottled scroll, losing all its colors. If this kind of life could end. Miss Chiao, what are you thinking about? Little Sixth Zheng turned to look at the silent little lady, slightly curious. This little girl, who always did things unexpectedly, was always able to catch his attention with her every move. Although she was silent the entire way, he could tell that the little lady's steps were brisk, and she seemed to be in a really good mood. Arbor retracted her faint memories, and the corner of her lips curled slightly. She was indeed in a very good mood. Because they encountered the giant bear squad again. Chapter 1037. Because, in Huge Bear Squad, those young lives exuded an aura of endless vitality. They were no longer ice, cold corpses. She was very happy. In this life, Huge Bear Squad would definitely have a very good life. Mr. Zhong, and Kai Kai, who had exquisite culinary skills, might be picked up by Huge Bear Squad's Captain Gao one day in the future. Perhaps it wouldn't be long before everyone would be reunited. Little Sixth. When we come out of the mystic realm, let's join Huge Bear Squad together, okay? The little girl turned around and looked at the youth with bright eyes. For some reason, Little Sixth Zheng nodded his head. Okay. The displeasure he felt from encountering those idiots from Eastern Nation was washed away by this faint joy. When the two returned to the court, the sky was already completely dark. There was nothing to be particular about in this small place. After casually washing her feet and wiping her hands, Arbor fell asleep. Beside her, Qin Susu was very well behaved and didn't disturb her by nagging. It was a peaceful and sleepless night. After waking up the next morning, Arbor, Little Sixth, Qin Susu, Duan Siren, and Do Fengqi were having a simple breakfast in the courtyard. Hong Bai and Fan Qiuming, who had just gotten up, walked out with dark circles under their eyes, looking like they hadn't slept well. What's good to eat? Fan Qiuming walked to everyone's side with a chuckle. Just as he was about to sit down, Qin Susu and the others turned around with their bowls in their hands. Hey, you can't eat without handing in your food. Dou Fengqi waved her hand at him. The rice was provided by each of them. Because our dear darling Qiao wasn't good at cooking since she was young, she had to give an extra portion of food as a service fee. Otherwise, how could they sit together and eat breakfast so harmoniously? Fan Shuming glanced at them in astonishment and opened his mouth, wanting to say something. Hong Bai directly took out a small bag of food from his pocket and asked with a sensible expression, "Who should I give this to?" "Oh, bring it over." Duan Siren reached out to take the bag of food he handed over. After opening it and taking a look, she nodded. "Scoop it yourself. This breakfast was cooked by 7th Duan. I should be able to eat until the day after tomorrow." Hong Bai muttered. He sat down and scooped up a bowl of porridge. "Stop grumbling. In a while, someone will go out and take a look. Other than the people from the Eastern Ing Nation, is everyone else here?" Dou Fengqi held her bowl and said as she ate. After Arbor finished eating, she wiped her mouth with a handkerchief and put down her bowl and chopsticks. "I'll go take a look." "Xiao Qiao, I'll go with you." Little Sixth Zheng promptly stood up and said. Dou Fengqi glanced at the two of them and made a face behind their backs. Little Qiao, Little Six, calling each other so intimately. Those who don't know would think that the two of them are having an affair. "Shut up. You're always thinking about dirty things." Qin Susu put down her chopsticks with a bang. "You'll wash the dishes later." "Why? You've given the least amount of grain out of everyone here. Xiao Qiao is paying double, and you're only paying half. There's no problem with giving less grain and putting in more effort, right?" Qin Susu rolled her eyes and turned to leave. "Fuck, just because she's the delicate crown princess, you guys are giving in to her, right?" Dou Fengqi was so angry that she also fiercely threw down her chopsticks. Duan Siren hurriedly said, all right, big sister Fengqi, you should also go out and take a look. I'll clean up here." Dou Fengqi grumbled as she stood up. "Hey, 7th Duan, I'm giving you face." Chapter 1038. Duan Siren glanced at Fan Qiuming, who was still standing. "Big brother Fan, we can't finish all of this. Sit down and eat with us." Fan Qiuming sat down. Seeing that Hong Bai kept staring at him, he was too embarrassed to pick up his chopsticks, so he took out a small bag of food from his inner world and handed it to Duan Siren. "Thanks for the trouble. It's fine. We're all in the same team, so it's only right that we help each other." Duan Siren nodded and sighed worriedly. It was like this at home, and it was also like this in the team. Actually, she hoped that everyone could get along well. After all, they were all from the Mo Kingdom. After entering the Mystic Realm, they still had to unite and fight for the Mystic Realm's treasures with the people from other kingdoms, right? If they couldn't get along well now, what could they say in the future? Sigh, also, it would be even better if the Crown Princess could help her persuade Fourth Brother. Unfortunately, whenever she mentioned Fourth Brother in the future, the little Crown Princess would stare daggers at her. She felt that not only would this willful and reckless person not help her persuade Fourth Brother, she might even add fuel to the fire and take the initiative to help Fourth Brother eliminate that group of worrisome older brothers in their family. Faint sorrow lingered in her heart. Duan Siren waited for the two to finish eating before swiftly packing up. Not long after Arbor and Little Sixth Zheng left, they saw Qin Susu and Dou Fengqi following them. "Those people should be arriving today. If they aren't, we can't wait any longer. Prepare to enter the forest tomorrow," Qin Susu said. Arbor had no other opinions, and the group walked toward the adventurer base's entrance. Before they reached the base's entrance, they heard an excited shout from afar. "Younger sister." The southern Shao Kingdom's Princess Mi was wearing a bright red riding outfit and a pair of high riding boots as she trotted over to Qiao Mu. That warmth really made it seem as if he had seen his own younger sister. "Oh, no, Perhaps Princess Mi wouldn't be this enthusiastic even if she saw her own younger sister. Arbor blinked and looked at Princess Mi, who instantly ran up to her and danced with joy. Princess Mi, what Princess Mi? Didn't we already agree on this? You call me Sister Mi, and I'll call you Sister Xiao Qiao, ha 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 ha. Princess Mi hopped forward, ignoring everyone else. She hugged Arbor and patted her back. Sis. They hadn't seen each other in years. I'm so happy to see you here today. Arbor nodded. Xiao Mi hugged her shoulder and stretched out her hand heroically. Let's go. I'll treat you to a meal. The imperial bodyguard behind Xiao Mi couldn't help but twitch his mouth. Princess, it's still early. It's not time for lunch yet. At the side, Dou Fengqi rolled her eyes and asked eccentrically, oh my, you've really toured the Mystic Beast Forest for a few days. One crown princess isn't enough, now there's another princess. She didn't believe that in the entire southern Shao Kingdom, there wouldn't be a girl under the age of 20 who was more talented. Wasn't it the selfishness of those in power who insisted on stuffing their sons and daughters into this trip to the mystic realm so that their children could benefit while tempering themselves? Their Mo Kingdom's old great king also wanted to stuff his children into this trip, but unfortunately, the 12th prince was a playful person. How could he be happy to be locked in the mystic realm for a month without leaving? As for the princesses, either their mother was worried about accidents and didn't allow them to go, or their talents were too poor and they couldn't go at all. If not for this, the 8 great patrician families would have to give up at least 2 spots. Chapter 1039. Who is this person? Xiao Mi hugged Arbor's shoulder and turned her head to glance at Dou Fengqi. I'm not familiar with her, Xiao Mu replied dryly. Xiao Mi laughed loudly. Not familiar is good, not familiar is good. Let's go, us sisters haven't seen each other for a long time. Let's find a place to chat. Dou Fengqi's nose was crooked from anger. Just as she was about to interject, she heard a series of chaotic screams coming from the base's entrance. The woman's screams were accompanied by the base's junior manager's stomping footsteps. An enchanting and charming woman was directly kicked from the base's entrance to this side, almost smashing into Dou Fengqi. Dou Fengqi's entire body shifted to the side. That woman fell to the ground with a bang, her clothes barely covering her body, revealing 2 snow-white thighs with blood-colored whip marks. She was battered and exhausted, and there were very obvious marks of being strangled on her chest and neck. She struggled for a long time but was unable to crawl up from the ground. Arbor glanced to the side and saw that it was the prostitute who had mocked her at the mission distribution center yesterday. Xiao Mi pulled her little sister and retreated a few steps, leaving an empty space in front of them. A dirty slut dares to come over and rub against this lord's body. She's simply courting death. Dig out her pair of dog eyes for me. She still dares to look. Stepping on pitch-black riding boots, the youth's head full of small braids swayed on the top of his head. In his hand was a black hard whip with barbed dark hooks. The youth's grave and stern face was full of ridicule. A pair of pitch-black wolf cub eyes coldly swept over everyone present. Xiao Mi curled her lips and muttered to Arbor in a low voice, what kind of person is this, acting as if he's some big shot? What she hated the most was seeing people bully the weak. After so many years, her sense of justice was still bursting. Seeing the youth tormenting a woman with such vigor, she immediately looked down on him. Ha! Big brother Ali, why bother so much with a dog? Disdainful mocking laughter rang out. An 18-year-old girl with half of her arms bare walked over to the young man. She was wearing a brightly colored skirt that only reached her knees. She had a strong foreign aura about her. She walked with light and slow steps like a bird as she cheerfully came to the young man's side. She smiled brightly and looked at the young man with eyes so bright that they almost sparkled like stars. She reached out to grab the young man's arm and leaned her soft body against him, looking like a little bird that was dependent on its master. The young man stood there with his slender legs spread apart like a pine tree, his figure tall and straight. Allowing the young girl to hold on to his wheat-colored arm, the young man's cold gaze fell on the terrified woman who was looking up at the sky. "What are you waiting for? Go dig out this bitch's eyes," the young man shouted angrily. Immediately, two burly men wrapped in cloth walked forward, scaring the prostitute to the point that her whole body trembled, and her face instantly turned pale. "Hey!" Princess Mi rushed forward like an arrow and stretched out her hands to block the woman. She roared with red eyebrows and green eyes, "Are you a man or not? Bullying a weak girl like this? Do you still have any shame?" Princess Mi's bodyguard, Gong Sun Lai, walked forward speechlessly. He made a sword-drawing posture as if he was facing a great enemy and looked at the young man with wolf-like eyes. "Shit, we haven't even entered the secret realm and the princess is causing trouble again. It's a pity that he was forced by his brother Gong Sun Yang to swear an oath to protect the princess with his life. Otherwise, he really wanted to throw the princess away and get lost." Chapter 1040. Hadn't the princess's sense of justice been fully displayed along the way? Daring to provoke just anyone, the youth in front of him was clearly not to be trifled with. However, Gong Sun Lai quickly realized that the wolf-eyed youth's line of sight wasn't on his princess, but rather, Gong Sun Lai turned his head to look at Arbor, who was standing behind the princess. Arbor naturally also noticed that the youth with a ponytail swaying back and forth, his eyes emitting a wolf-like glint, was fiercely glaring at her with a face full of rage. Darling Qiao was at a loss. It seemed like she hadn't made a sound from the beginning to the end. It was clearly Princess Mi who jumped up to save her, and it was also Princess Mi who was angrily arguing with this youth. What kind of gaze was this youth having? Why was he staring at her at this moment? "It's you." The Aikido youth jumped 3 feet high, the hard whip in his hand pointed at Arbor in front of him, his face filled with coldness and resentment. "Ha ha ha." Princess Mi suddenly put her hands on her hips and laughed loudly. This great aunt was wondering. "Brat, why do you look so familiar? So it's someone from the Aikido tribe. That stinky man from before who was beaten up like a dog by my little sister Qiao. Wasn't he as arrogant as you before, but in the end, wasn't he still beaten up by our little sister Qiao?" Ha 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 ha. Princess Mi almost couldn't control her unrestrained laughter. Darling Qiao was expressionless. "Who?" Princess Mi's loud laughter suddenly stopped, and she turned to look at her younger sister with a speechless expression. Seeing her face full of confusion, he then realized, what the hell, this little fellow doesn't remember the Aikido tribe's youth, ACI. Pitiful youth. What could be more tragic than being mercilessly forgotten by others? "Witch, it's you." The Aikido girl on the side also screamed. Letting go of the youth Ali's arm, this girl didn't say anything else and pulled out the dagger tied to her leg, running towards Arbor. "Stinky witch, prepare to die." The base manager shouted with a face full of anger, "All of you, stop. Fuck, can these people stop for a bit?" Only 1 day had passed and the dogs were biting each other again. "Didn't we agree to go to your secret realm to fight each other? What are you guys doing here in this small base?" Boom. Arbor's figure hurriedly dashed forward and kicked out with his small foot, ruthlessly landing on the Aikido girl's abdomen. The girl rolled from one end to the other and fell to the ground with a bang. She struggled to get up for a long time. The dagger in the girl's hand naturally fell into Arbor's hands. She mercilessly snapped it in half and mercilessly threw it to the ground. "You're the demon girl, your whole family are demon girls." The corners of Princess Mi's mouth twitched, and she couldn't help but burst into laughter. He didn't know why, but he had originally thought that the little fellow was particularly ferocious. Now that he saw her saying such words with a straight face, he instantly felt that she was strangely adorable. Ali didn't even look at Jackdaw. Instead, he stared coldly at Arbor. "You witch, you're the one who put the goo in my brother. Now you still dare to be so arrogant, do you really think that no one can deal with you? You're crazy." Arbor turned around and left. Why are there always people who I don't know coming to find trouble with me? What does it have to do with me that my brother was put in a goo? Stop her. The Aikido youth was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of blood. Chapter 1041. Several able-bodied men from the Aikido tribe rushed over and surrounded Arbor. They fiercely pulled out the scimitars at their waists and pointed them at Arbor. Are you looking for death? Xiaomi shouted and pulled out a short blade from her waist. Just as she was about to move, she saw a dozen black-clothed youths appear beside Arbor. Without saying a word, they attacked the able-bodied men from the Aikido tribe. The battle between the two sides was on the verge of breaking out. The entrance of the adventurers' base was instantly filled with the sounds of swords clashing. The junior manager of the base was so angry that he stomped his feet. He gave a few people beside him a look, telling them to quickly invite the leader out. This base was currently managed by the Wind Wolf mercenary group. Their leader, Wind Wolf, was only in his early 30s. However, because of his outstanding ability and high cultivation, he was widely respected. The junior manager of the base sent someone to invite Wind Wolf over while he hurriedly called over a dozen soldiers. He wanted to go forward and separate the group of people who were fighting. However, once the battle started, how could a dozen soldiers from the base be allowed to interfere? The manager was so angry that he stomped his feet and roared, "You guys stop right now. If you make a loud noise and cause a beast tide, I'll tell you. You guys are all dead. Not only that, you'll also harm the innocent people in the base. A bunch of little bastards only know how to stir up trouble all day long." The people who were fighting were already so anxious that their eyes turned red. How could they still listen to the manager's nagging? The people from the Aikido tribe were no match for Lightning's group. After being suppressed for a while, the dozen or so able-bodied men from the Aikido tribe were all taken down by Lightning's group. Kneel. Lightning kicked the back of one of the able-bodied men's knee. That man was forced to bend his leg and his knee heavily hit the ground. He glared hatefully but didn't make a sound. The manager's expression became very ugly. He turned to look at the expressionless Arbor who was standing to the side. "Miss, are you still not going to ask them to stop?" "Why should I stop? Are you blind? Didn't you see that they were the ones who attacked me first?" Arbor glanced at him coldly. "If someone slaps your left cheek, would you shamelessly stretch out your right cheek and let them continue? You." The steward was rendered speechless by her sharp tongue. "Kill him." Arbor coldly passed down the order. He didn't even bother to glance at the youth from the Aikido tribe and directly turned to leave. Hee hee. Ha ha ha. Killing people is such a fun thing, of course you have to count me in. A crisp voice sounded at the entrance of the base. Everyone only saw a blur in front of their eyes. A swift and violent wind carried a red figure, suddenly sweeping past the entrance of the base, causing sand and dust to rise. Roar! A golden-eyed, blue-eyed tiger with 4 wings suddenly pushed a burly man to the ground. It raised its claws and pressed them on the man's neck. It only needed one claw to crush the man's throat and cause him to die an unnatural death. The Aikido man's face was pale, and his eyes were wide with fear as he stared straight at the huge tiger above his head. His body trembled slightly, not daring to move at all. At this time, they suddenly heard the crisp sound of a silver bell. A 16-year-old girl appeared at the entrance of the base. She was dressed in a bright red gauze that wrapped around her graceful and exquisite body. The corners of her eyes and the tips of her eyebrows were slightly raised. Her eyes seemed to be electrified, curved like the stars and the moon. The demon sect Saintess. Everyone was shocked. Chapter 1042. The young girl wore a pink veil and was barefooted, revealing a small portion of her fair ankles. She wore 2 bells on each of her head, which jingled as she walked. The appearance of such a scantily clad, beautiful young girl immediately attracted the gazes of many men in the base, and gasps could be heard from all around. Behind her were 2 rows of more than a dozen young girls carrying small flower baskets. Their gauze fluttered in the wind, and all of them wore veils, revealing only a pair of watery eyes. The crowd didn't all have infatuated gazes. Many of them had a hint of surprise in their eyes. Sure enough, it was incredible up close. It really was the demonic sex holy maiden on a trip. However, Arbor didn't recognize the girl in front of her at all. Lightning led the group back to Arbor's side vigilantly. She took a step forward and whispered to her, "Crown Princess, judging from this person's attire, she should be the demonic sex holy maiden Sikong Fuling that has been widely rumored in the streets." "Oh," Arbor responded expressionlessly. "She also wants to enter the secret realm?" Arbor then asked with a frown. "A member of the demonic sect, coincidentally bringing people here at this time. She must be aiming for the Mystic Beast Forest secret realm," Lightning whispered. "Ha ha ha. Everyone has come from afar. Why must you attack as soon as you meet?" At this time, a sonorous voice approached from afar. The commander of the Wind Wolf mercenary group quickly rushed over with a group of people. He cupped his hands toward Arbor, Sikong Fuling, and the Aikido youth, and laughed heartily. "Everyone is young men and women who are going to enter the Mystic Beast Forest to participate in the Secret Realms trials. There will be plenty of time to fight in the future. Our small base can't bear everyone's anger. Ha, please don't make things difficult for us and quickly stop." Arbor frowned slightly, and her gaze swept coldly toward Commander Wind Wolf. "When I want to teach someone a lesson, I don't like anyone interfering. You can't be an exception." After she finished speaking, a water spirit emerged from her hand and instantly transformed into an ice spike. She raised her hand, ready to strike. Commander Wind Wolf's eyelids twitched fiercely as he looked at the little girl beside him in shock. This little girl looked cold and aloof, no more than 14 or 15 years old. However, at this time, she had revealed one of the 5 spirits, the water spirit. "What are you trying to do?" The Aikido youth stepped forward angrily. "I ordered them to attack you. If you have any anger, you can direct it at me." Arbor glanced at him coldly and aimed the icicle in his hand at the Aikido youth. "Looks like a man." The corners of everyone's mouths twitched. In the next instant, he saw the little girl leap into the air. With a terrifying floating flash, she instantly appeared beside the young man. The ice spike in her hand pierced towards the young man's chest without hesitation. Terrifying. The Aikido girl, Akir, covered her mouth and screamed. She hurriedly shouted at the strong men of the Aikido tribe, "Quick, what are you standing there for? Quickly go and help young Master Ali." Ali's chest was pressed against by the ice spike. His pupils shrank slightly as he took a deep breath. His upper body leaned back, and he dodged the little girl's attack. When he straightened up with a carp flip, Xiaomu kicked him squarely in the face, directly kicking him so hard that his nose started bleeding. Everyone. Many strong Aikido men rushed forward, intending to gang up and attack. "Don't come over," the Aikido youth shouted angrily. He clenched the hard whip in his hand, his fingers sweating. Chapter 1043. The Aikido youth gritted his teeth and waved his whip straight at the little girl, sweeping it across the ground, leaving a shallow white mark. "You're overestimating yourself." The little girl's figure flashed as fast as lightning, shuttling back and forth under the whip's shadow. She was so fast that most people couldn't detect her movements at all. She circled a few times as if she were passing through flowers and trees before quickly flashing behind the Aikido youth. An icicle shot at the youth's left shoulder with a poof. A ferocious mystic energy came from behind and directly sent the Aikido youth flying. With a bang, he half sprawled on the ground. He. The demonic cult's holy daughter's bell-like laughter came from the graceful figure. With a wave of her hand, the four-winged jade-eyed golden tiger released the Aikido youth whose chest it was pressing against with its claws. It jumped up from the youth's body, opened its bloody mouth, and fiercely bit at the neck of the Aikido youth sprawled on the ground. "Have mercy!" Commander Feng Lang's pupils contracted as he hastily shouted. What a joke! These youths were all from various clans and even the royal family's orthodox bloodline. Their small adventurer base couldn't bear the wrath of the clans behind these people. Right now, he wanted to send these demons of plague into the mystic beast forest. No matter how they fought in the forest, even if someone died, it had nothing to do with their base. Arbor slashed a sharp blade formed from mystic energy at the holy daughter with a backhand move. He said sternly, "Who wants you to attack? Go away. Meddlesome fellow." She hated it the most when someone intervened in the middle of a fight to pick up the slack. She didn't fight well enough at all. Lightning's group of hidden guards twitched their mouths one after another. If their crown prince was here, he would definitely feel that such a crown prince consort was so adorable that it touched his heart. Wah! The holy daughter of the demonic cult dodged to the side. Her butterfly wing-like eyelashes fluttered, and a layer of mist covered her watery eyes. She pouted and grumbled, bad girl," hitting people without distinguishing between good and bad. "I won't play with you anymore." Most of the people present were attracted by this delicate saint of the demonic sect. Although her appearance wasn't as outstanding as the little girl with the stoic face, her pitch-black demonic eyes were exceptionally captivating. It was as if they possessed demonic power and attracted people's gazes like magnets. Leader Feng Lang heaved a sigh of relief. Presumably, he was also aware of the demonic sect's holy maiden's identity. He cupped his hands towards her and said, "Many thanks to Holy Maiden for showing mercy." "Ha, Jean Bo, don't scare people. Come back quickly." The saintess of the demonic sect waved at her four-winged jade-eyed golden tiger with a smile. She then turned to Leader Feng Lang and said politely, "Leader Feng, don't worry. I was just joking with a guest from the west." Commander Feng smiled and nodded before shifting his gaze to Arbor. He laughed and said, "This young lady from Northern Mo. The guests from Northern Wei and Southern Bailey have actually arrived 3 days ago. Come, let me introduce everyone." With that, he hurriedly stepped aside, revealing the 8 people from Northern Wei and Southern Bailey. "Everyone, this one is Wei Nanshu." The young master who spoke was the first to walk out of the crowd. He cupped his hands towards Arbor and the others, and his eyes flickered as he said, "This must be Northern Prince Mo's consort." Arbor nodded indifferently. "This one is Jean Hongwan from Jean Family Castle." The young girl cupped her hands in greeting. Chapter 1044. Dressed in a bright yellow dress, Jean Hongwan's bright eyes revealed a faint smile. The Jin clan fort was the most famous fort in Northern Wei, and there were countless experts in the fort. This Jin Hongwan was the fort lord's only daughter, the eldest miss of the Jin clan fort. Bailey Wu greets everyone. "Consort Prince Mo, nice to meet you. Please take care of me in the future." The youth named Bailey Wu hopped forward with a grin, his round baby face full of smiles. Facing such a smiling baby face, he really couldn't bring himself to be cold. Arbor swept him a glance, and his cold face eased a bit. Bailey Zhen. The 5th princess of the Bailey dynasty wore her hair in a tasseled bun, with only a simple glazed hairpin inserted into it. She was a delicate and pretty little beauty, but one mustn't be deceived by her cloud-like appearance. When she glanced back, there was a bit of craftiness in her eyes. Bailey Zhen was a famous female genius in the southern Bailey kingdom. Her talent was close to that of the second prince, Bailey Shi, and she was highly valued by the great king of Bailey. Qin Susu smiled and said, "This one is Qin Susu of Northern Mo's Qin estate. Everyone, since everyone is here, let's set out for the Mystic Beast Forest tomorrow morning, all right?" "Excellent." Bailey Wu was the first to raise both hands and feet in agreement. He was tired of waiting for people from various kingdoms to arrive these past few days, and he wanted to quickly set out for the Mystic Beast Forest to properly show off his skills. If everyone has no objections. I have objections. A muffled roar came from outside the crowd. He saw a group of people from the Eastern Kingdom surrounding their eldest prince and third prince like stars surrounding the moon, rushing over aggressively. Qin Susu swept them a glance, and her lips curled into a sneer. What objections does the eldest crown prince of the Eastern Kingdom have? Old Third and I were beaten up by your northern prince Mo before we even entered the base, the eldest crown prince shouted angrily. The third crown prince hurriedly reached out to tug at his elder brother. Only then did the first crown prince notice that the people nearby were covering their mouths as they snickered at them. The crown prince shifted his short and muscular body. His face turned red as he placed his hands on his waist. However, his voice had unknowingly become softer. Shouldn't you give us some time to recuperate? What are your intentions for entering the Mystic Beast Forest at this time? Do you want to push Old Third and me to our deaths without doing anything? The Forest Mystic Realm will open in 5 days. Once we enter the forest, we have to find a way to get there. Time is of the essence. If this drags on, everyone can forget about entering the Mystic Realm. Little Sixth Zheng said coldly. Yes, we can't drag everyone down because of your personal reasons. Dou Fengqi also agreed, if you have any objections. You can stay in this base and continue to recuperate. No one will stop you. The people of Northern Mo still dare to be long-winded. If it wasn't for you guys this time. Why are we brothers in such a sorry state? The crown prince was furious. Every injustice has its perpetrator and every debt has its debtor. Go find whoever beat you guys up. Dou Fengqi called out eccentrically and casually tidied her hair. I think you guys should treat yourselves properly first. If you force your way into the forest, who knows if you'll implicate others. You. The crown prince swept her a sinister glance before turning to Arbor. Consort Prince Mo, what do you say? I do have a question. Chapter 1045. Are the two of you sure you want to follow them into the Mystic Beast Forest secret realm? Arbor swept a glance at the Eastern Kingdom's crown prince and third crown prince. I heard that if someone who has reached the age of 20 tries to force their way into the Mystic Beast Forest secret realm, they will be obliterated at the entrance. The eldest crown prince's face darkened. Everyone knows what you just said. What kind of question is this? Arbor looked curiously at the 2 crown princes of the Eastern Kingdom. You two are already in your 40s, yet you still want to follow a group of youths into the Mystic Beast Forest secret realm. Do you want to court death? You're the one in your 40s. The Eastern Kingdom's eldest crown prince stomped his feet in anger and reprimanded, Consort Prince Mo, you're truly too rude. This crown prince is 19 this year and has yet to reach 20. My name is Jian of the Eastern Kingdom. The instant the young crown princess spoke, Lightning and the others couldn't resist sniggering behind them. As expected. After the conversation between the crown princess and the Eastern Kingdom's eldest crown prince, everyone present couldn't help but laugh. Indeed, the 2 crown princes of the Eastern Kingdom appeared rather old. Because the people of the Eastern Kingdom had always lived on an island, the environment was closed and vile, and the food they ate was very monotonous. It was said that the average height of the men of the Eastern Kingdom was about the same as that of the women of Northern Mo. The young crown princess words pricked their hearts, causing the faces of the 2 crown princes of the Eastern Kingdom to darken. They wished for nothing more than to send this young crown princess flying with a single slap. Oh, then I was worrying too much. The young crown princess admitted her mistake and nodded sincerely. Apologies. Looking at your faces, I thought you were all in your 40s, so I wanted to remind you. Enough. The Eastern Kingdom's eldest crown prince roared at her. Consort Prince Mo, don't randomly change the topic. Oh, then since no one has any objections, let's meet tomorrow at dawn. Tomorrow morning, we will gather here and head to the mystic beast forest. Arbor nodded to himself, turned around, and trotted away. Everyone was speechless. What the Eastern Kingdom's crown prince said before, the little crown princess didn't listen at all. She directly hammered down the plan and even fixed the time. What else was there to say? No wonder the two crown princes of the Eastern Kingdom were so angry that their faces darkened. All right, I'll see you tomorrow. I'll go back and prepare more medicine in case you need it. Bailey Wu laughed heartily. The crowd dispersed one after another, leaving only the crown prince of the Eastern nation standing at the entrance of the empty base with his hands on his waist, cursing loudly. Northern Mo's capital. Old master, there's a young master surnamed Mu. He's here to visit you. Surnamed Mu. Qiao Zhongbang stared blankly and exchanged glances with his wife. I'll go out to meet him. I wonder if he's a young master from a talisman aristocratic family. Wei Ziqin hurriedly stood up, unable to hide the anxiety on her face. Master, I will go with you. What's wrong? Seeing his wife's strange expression, Qiao Zhongbang couldn't help but step forward to support her. Don't worry, they won't come knocking on our door. Their Mu family doesn't have that much guts. As the husband and wife spoke, they arrived at the antechamber and immediately saw a tall and sturdy young man with his back facing them. You are a young master from the Mu family? What business do you have? Qiao Zhongbang looked at this unfamiliar figure in surprise, a faint trace of doubt surfacing in his eyes. That person turned around, and half of a jade pendant with a red string slid out of his hand. Wei Ziqin's pupils contracted, and she abruptly fell backward. Chapter 1046. Your Highness. Just now, that seventh Master Mu from the Divine Province went to the Marquis of Jiayuan's estate to pay a visit to the Marquis and Madame. Huifeng's soft voice interrupted Mo Yan's train of thought. His wrist paused, and the words under his pen were slightly crooked by half an inch. He pursed his lips and didn't speak for a long time. After finishing the letter in his hand and sealing it, he asked, "What is it?" This subordinate didn't find out the specifics. We only found out that 7th Master Mu stayed in the Marquis of Jiayuan's estate for less than an hour before he left in a hurry. There weren't any issues. It was the Marquis who personally saw that 7th Master Mu out. Mo Yan creased her brows. She also couldn't understand why Mu Jingrui from the upper 3 provinces was looking for Jojo's parents. Have the arrangements for Peace Town been completed? Everything has been prepared. Your Highness, shall we hurry over tonight? The brush in Mo Yan's hand snapped with a crack. We don't want to leave a single one of them alive. Yes. At this time, outside Beilan City, inside an abandoned inn in a shabby town. Faint, muffled coughs could be heard from a dark side room. The candlelight flickered, and Qiu San lit a small, dim yellow lamp in the room. He hastily walked to the bed and said, "Sir, bad news." Not good, Black Cat and Lady Zheng both died in the pacification pagoda. This subordinate found out after much difficulty. Young He was actually ordered by the Great King to whip her corpse for 3 days and nights. The Great King is truly ruthless. In any case, a night as husband and wife means endless devotion for the rest of your life. He doesn't even care about the slightest bit of kindness. Cough, cough, cough. Lu Yiji's face appeared to have aged even more after these years. Ever since that old fellow from the Holy Water sect led him up into the sky and was affected by the explosion, his body hadn't recovered much in these 3 years. Especially when he had to hide from Northern Prince Mo, he couldn't eat or sleep well. Sometimes, when he was in the middle of cultivating, he would have to immediately move out and find a new place to live when the wind blew. Don't worry about that. Lu Yiji's eyes were powerless, and his grizzled hair drooped messily on his face. His back was hunched, and he coughed repeatedly with a handkerchief covering his mouth. Then, he continued, I asked you to find someone to pull strings. How is the contact for the ship leaving Northern Mo coming along? The ship has been contacted, but this subordinate is worried that when we reach the docks, we will encounter the Northern Mo soldiers' investigation of our identities. At that time. Cough, cough, cough. A cold glint flashed through Luigi's eyes. Whoever dares to stop us from boarding the ship, will kill them first. That despicable Northern Prince Mo had been chasing after the people of Shuntian Prefecture all these years, looking as if he would not stop until he had killed them all. He was simply ruthless. Where's Su Fang? That old auntie probably couldn't bear to see Her Highness Zheng's corpse thrown into the wilderness and went to collect it. That's unnecessary. Cough, cough, cough. Luigi was so angry that his chest tightened and he coughed. If she exposes our tracks here, I'll cripple this old hag. My lord, please be at ease. This subordinate believes that Mammy Su isn't that stupid. Humph, if it weren't for that damned black cat disregarding my orders and running to Northern Prince Mo to throw away its life, how could it have ended up without a corpse? Luigi cursed angrily. Idiots. They're all idiots. I already said to bide my time and wait for the limelight to blow over. None of the three brothers are of any use. My lord, please be at ease. There are still more than 100 people following my lord, and escorting my lord onto the ship is absolutely no problem. Chiao-san helped Luigi lie down. Unfortunately, in less than 3 seconds, an explosion reverberated throughout Ping An town. Chapter 1047. With a stooped back, Luigi anxiously sat up and abruptly grabbed Chiao-san's arm. What's that sound? Sir, I'll go out and take a look. Chiao-san hastily hid at the door in a flash. Through the thin window lattice, he could only see red flames soaring into the sky. He could vaguely make out many people running back and forth in the town. Their hoarse roars were mixed with the creaking sound of the flames roasting the wooden window lattice. The entire Peace Town seemed to have sunk into hell on earth. Bang! A heavy blow landed on the door. Chiao-san hastily opened the door, only to see a subordinate covered in blood stumbling inside. He anxiously cried out intermittently, Sir, sir. It's not good, Peace Town has many soldiers. Ugh! Swish! A feathered arrow directly pierced the back of his head, killing him on the spot. Chiao-san flew up and kicked that person out of the door before hastily closing the door to the side room. Subsequently, he heard the sound of arrows hitting the door. Sir! We've been surrounded. Chiao-san turned to look at Luigi in alarm. Luigi, who was wearing a white inner garment, sat on the bed and coughed violently. He abruptly smashed the low cabinet at the head of the bed with his fist. Northern Mo's heir apparent. They've gone too far. Intense hatred burst forth from his eyes, and he abruptly stood up while coughing violently. Sir! Chiao-san hastily reached out to support Luigi, his eyes filled with panic. What do we do now, sir? It can't really be that old bitch Su Fang who exposed our whereabouts. Luigi raised his hand to stop Chiao-san from continuing to nag. It was already useless to talk about this now. The top priority was to think of a way to leave this place as soon as possible. Boom! Bailon City, which was close to Peace Town, was also jolted awake by this. Everyone pushed open their windows and looked at the distant horizon in fright, only to see a stretch of scarlet-red flames illuminating the horizon, burning furiously. City Lord Lin Yongyi's voice quickly rang out in the sky above Bailon City. All citizens need not be nervous. The city has already taken adequate safety measures. Even if some scattered corpse puppets are attracted here, they won't be able to break through our defenses. Only then did the commoners calm down and shrink back into their houses. However, they couldn't fall asleep no matter what. Lin Yongyi stood by the window and looked up in the direction of Peace Town. He shook his head slightly and muttered to himself, His Highness led 3,000 mystic cultivators and several tens of thousands of elite soldiers this time and surrounded the entire Peace Town overnight. This time, I'm afraid that the remnants of Shuntian Prefecture will find it hard to escape even if they grow wings. The fire in Peace Town burned for most of the night. The wobbling zombies that had been attracted by the fire and sound were swiftly dealt with by the mystic cultivators guarding the perimeter before they could approach Peace Town. Lu Yizhi and Qiu San each put on a pitch-black cloak and originally wanted to slip away from the back of the town. Unfortunately, the entire Ping and town was surrounded, and there was no way to escape. The two of them fought while waiting for an opportunity to break free. As they fought, they felt the surrounding atmosphere slowly calm down, and a burst of terror floated to Lu Yizhi's heart. It caused him to turn around in shock. A ray of light that resembled a snowy line emitted light in the dark night. With a slender, jet-black sword in hand, Raven Moon went straight for Lu Yizhi's neck. The fingers holding the sword were slender and powerful, and the blade emitted a black light. Chapter 1048. Lu Yizhi's outer robe was instantly torn apart by the sword qi. With a ripping sound, a thin white undergarment was revealed, fluttering loudly in the boundless night. Cough, cough, cough. Lu Yizhi's breathing was rather disorderly as he coughed several times, and his old eyes shot a venomous glint at the Crown Prince. Northern Prince Mo, you're a good one. You dare to exterminate our Shuntian Prefecture's people. Aren't you afraid of bringing an undeserved calamity to your northern Wa? What answered him was Prince Mo's sword light, which abruptly struck his shoulder. However, Lu Yizhi was already on guard, and the tip of this sword only struck the defensive barrier. Yet this seemingly indifferent strike abruptly shattered the defensive barrier on Lu Yizhi's body. A trace of panic finally surfaced in Lu Yizhi's eyes as he dazedly stared at the defensive ring in his hand. Due to the damage from the sword qi, it fell to the ground with a clang like a piece of scrap metal. Prince Mo glanced at him with a sneer. Lu Yizhi, bring out your greatest fighting strength and courage to fight with this crown prince. Today, we won't rely on anyone else. Mo Yen raised his hand and gently swiped it, immediately withdrawing the Raven Moon sword into his conscious. When Lu Yizhi saw him looking down on him, he was so angry that his chest heaved up and down. Cough, cough. He coughed violently. Good. Good, good. Let this old man personally experience Northern Mo's Crown Prince's brilliant moves. After saying that, a giant black dog abruptly crawled on the ground and was about to charge forward. Purple flames suddenly fell around that giant dog, building a high burning wall around it. With a whoosh, the fire rose with the wind and ignited its fur. Bastard! Seeing this, Lu Yizhi abruptly swung a tiger-headed walking stick at the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince raised his cold eyebrows and lightly leaped in front of Lu Yizhi. Instead of retreating, he advanced and slammed his elbow into Lu Yizhi's chest. Midway, he changed his move and reached out to lock Lu Yizhi's arm. With a tug, the Crown Prince tore off half of Lu Yizhi's white inner garment, revealing his dark, old back. Ha 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 ha. Mocking laughter rang out from all around. Lu Yizhi's old face flushed red, and a trace of irritable fury flitted across his eyes. Just as Qiu San was about to move, he saw a blur in front of his eyes. An expressionless boy of about 14 or 15 years old suddenly blocked his path. The golden-red demon eyes flashed with a cold light. Qiu San was slightly shocked and subconsciously took a step back. Your Highness! Your Highness! At this moment, the soldiers who had formed a large circle around the area began to shout excitedly. If Qiu San wanted to retreat further, he would retreat into the defensive barrier set up by several mystic cultivators. He could only brace himself and face the young man who was trying to bully him. On the other side, Lu Yizhi was barely able to fend off a few blows. However, when the crutch in his hand blocked Mo Yen's punch head-on, it was directly smashed into two with a crack. Holding the two broken crutches, Lu Yizhi staggered back a few steps. With a whoosh, he struck out several mystic force palms and created a small passage in the circle of purple flames that had trapped his mystic beast. The giant black dog dashed out of that small passage with its tail between its legs and whimpered a few times while panting for breath. Before one person and one dog could meet, Mo Lien flashed and kicked the black dog's large head with a flying kick. Then, a cracking sound was heard. Lu Yizhi abruptly widened his eyes and roared sternly, "No!" Chapter 1049. He was completely unable to comprehend how a level 12 mystic beast like him could die from Prince Mo's kick just like that. How easy was it to kill him? Unable to react in time, Lu Yizhi spat out a mouthful of blood in a split second. The backlash from the death of a mystic beast to its master immediately caused him to fall limp to the ground, and his limbs twitched reflexively. In a flash, Mo Lien pressed forward and reached out her lustrous, jade-white fingers, abruptly grabbing the back of Lu Yizhi's collar. "I'm going to kill you!" Lu Yizhi roared madly with a trace of blood hanging from the corner of his mouth. He abruptly separated his old palms and ruthlessly smashed them toward the Crown Prince's chest. "You overestimate yourself," the Crown Prince murmured softly. A layer of spirit armor instantly climbed up his slender limbs until it rapidly wrapped around his entire body. The black spirit armor wrapped around his slender, jade bamboo-like body looked exceptionally beautiful. However, Lu Yizhi felt a chill in his heart, and he spat out another mouthful of blood in fright. Spirit armor. Full-body spirit armor. Who exactly was this person? Such terrifying talent was actually someone from the lower star domain? This. How? Was it possible? Possible? Even people from the middle 6 prefectures might not necessarily be able to comprehend full-body spirit armor. Furthermore, how could full-body spirit armor suddenly appear in this suppressed spacetime of the lower star domain? Usually, great spiritual masters would generate partial shields or spirit armor to increase their own defense by a level. But now, this person in front of him actually produced full-body spirit armor. Lu Yizhi's palm struck the Crown Prince's body, which was wrapped in full-body spirit armor, and a crisp crack was heard. Lu Yizhi's arms were devoured by the rebound force of the spirit armor's protection, and his old arms instantly fractured. His chest also swelled from the rebound force, and he repeatedly spat out mouthfuls of blood. After spitting it out, he rapidly wilted and completely lost the ability to fight. Feeling that the mystic energy in his mystic meridians had already been exhausted, Lu Yizhi powerlessly drooped his head and panted heavily like a dead dog waiting to be slaughtered. Northern Prince Mo. Void Sword. Devour the heavens and devour the sun. Fearless. When the many elite soldiers and guards in the surroundings saw that His Highness was so valiant and subdued a level 15 mystic cultivator in a few moves, they immediately cheered. Your Highness! Your Highness! Your Highness! The sound traveled to the nearby Bailon city. The people of the entire Bailon city, who hadn't dared to sleep to begin with, were completely roused awake by this sound. Prince Mo raised his hand and stopped the excited shouts. His cold voice filled the night sky, "My brothers of the northern Mo kingdom. My loved ones. The people of the 6 prefectures humiliated my homeland. Trampling on the soil of the northern Mo kingdom. You slaughtered my wife and children and killed my brothers. How should we fight back? Kill. 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 For Mo. For His Highness the Crown Prince. Kill all these bitches. Kill. Kill. Kill." Seething roars continuously spread across this land and reverberated in the air for a long time, shocking everyone. Northern Prince Mo slightly exerted force on the back of Lu Yizhi's neck, and with a crisp crack, Lu Yizhi howled miserably, feeling that his neck was about to be crushed by this terrifying Crown Prince. He was about to die. Right. At this moment, Chiu Sen also heard Lu Yizhi's wretched howls. His originally flustered heart was now filled with sorrow. Chapter 1050. He felt that he and Sir Lu might be buried in this run-down town today. He had a rather bad premonition. Amidst the sounds of kill 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 that filled the air, Chiu San gritted his teeth and made a final struggle. He summoned a mystic beast with an abnormally ferocious appearance. Its eyes were wide open as it stared at the young man in front of it with a bloodthirsty expression. It crouched there and appeared to be enormous in size. It bared its ghastly fangs and smelly water continuously dripped from its mouth. It looked extremely filthy and unbearable. When the numerous elite guards saw this ferocious beast, their breathing also tightened. Their eyes involuntarily looked towards this abnormally thin and frail young man. However, the young man was as calm as ever, as if he hadn't seen the ferocious beast. He snorted coldly and took a step forward with his left foot, drawing a semicircle on the ground. A fierce and cold tyrannical aura immediately charged towards the other side. That was the supreme aura of the ancient golden dragon. Even Chiu San, who was caught off guard, fell to the ground on his butt, not to mention the ferocious beast, which had originally looked very arrogant, hugged its head with its claws and whimpered as it shrunk its head. Chiu San felt that his hand that was holding the short sword was already covered in sticky cold sweat. This should be called fear. Get up, quickly get up. Chiu San forced himself to stand up and urged his mystic beast. However, the figure in front of him flashed, and the young man had already arrived in front of the ferocious beast. The ferocious beast simply couldn't summon any thoughts of resistance. It hugged its head and lay on the ground, devoutly waiting for death to descend. Ah! Chiu San madly ran towards the young man, ruthlessly smashing mystic energy in his hands over and over again. However, in the end, he only fell to the ground in a sorry state. He stared blankly as the young man expressionlessly killed his mystic beast like the god of death had descended. This was a ferocious beast that he had painstakingly found in the mystic beast forest. Now, it was killed effortlessly like tofu. Why was it like this? What kind of terrifying might was on that young man's body? This pair of unlucky master and servant lost their mystical beasts one after the other, and were thrown to the ground like trash. Their two heads fiercely collided together, and they panted in confusion. Seventh Yen retreated behind the crown prince with a cold expression. His pair of golden-red bewitching eyes stared icily at Lu Yizhi and his servant, who were sitting on the ground with their hair disheveled. Our prefecture lord, won't let you off. Lu Yizhi's voice was hoarse as he growled in his final struggle. Really? Who are you trying to fool? Crown Prince Mo scoffed. Ha! The passage between the 6 prefectures and the lower star system opens once every 10 years to welcome those who have comprehended the power of the 5 spirits and are about to break through to the spirit realm. Other than that, all of them came to the lower domain through secret tunnels or rare spatial rune arrays. There was one downside to this kind of special channel space rune array. It was not stable enough, and it was not recognized by the heavenly axiom. Furthermore, it could not be transported on a large scale. He could be killed by the heavenly Tao at any time. Unless he lowered his own cultivation and suppressed his realm. Otherwise, you won't be able to come over. Just like you. You useless dog. It doesn't feel good to be suppressed from the spirit realm to the mystic realm, right? Ah! Lu Yizhi angrily pounded the ground and roared, but you used spirit energy. It was just as he said. Chapter 1051. In the lower star domain, if the heavenly law captured the trajectory of spirit power, it would certainly mercilessly obliterate the heavenly law. Thus, how could this young crown prince disregard the heavenly law's punishment and use the power of fire spirit as he pleased? It could even form a full-body spirit armor. What did he rely on? A divine artifact. The crown prince must have some kind of camouflage on him, a divine artifact that could deceive the heavenly law. Ah! What kind of divine artifact was it that was so powerful that it could deceive the heavenly law? Or was it that The heavenly law was also biased. Luigi squirmed on the ground, and he couldn't stop spitting out blood. Just now, he had used all the strength in his body to strike the Crown Prince's palm at close range, but it was blocked by the spirit armor. All the mystic force had rebounded onto his body, and his internal organs had been overturned. At this moment, Luigi's entire body was in pain. Cough, cough, cough. As he coughed heavily, the blood at the corner of Luigi's mouth kept spreading. However, the Crown Prince looked at him with an indifferent expression. Suddenly, he opened his palm, and a suction force directly sucked Luigi into his hand. Cough, cough, cough. What do you want to do? The Crown Prince curled his lips disdainfully and coldly spat out 3 words. Search your soul. Luigi's pupils directly contracted countless times. Search his soul. No, that was impossible. How could the young northern Prince Imo possibly use this kind of method that the God Realm experts of the upper 3 provinces would use? Searching one's soul was definitely a method invented by God Realm experts to quickly understand the enemy's entire life. Of course, it was also possible that the enemy's divine sense would backfire when using it. Thus, ordinary God Realm experts used it cautiously and wouldn't use this kind of bloody method unless it was absolutely necessary. A person whose soul had been searched would naturally become an idiot who only had brute force and lost consciousness. No, you can't do that to me. Your Highness the Crown Prince, I am Shuntian Prefecture's 3rd manager. I am a mere servant who speaks nonsense and has no sense of shame. This Crown Prince is also somewhat curious. Will the Shuntian Prefecture's Prefecture Lord wantonly mobilize troops and provoke my northern moi for the sake of you old dogs? Crown Prince Imo harumphed coldly, his tone icy and resolute. Kill however many come. Ah! Ah! Luigi felt a sudden pain in his head as a terrifying and tyrannical aura instantly penetrated his conscious. Like an invisible hand, it directly grabbed his head and wantonly searched through all his memories. The Crown Prince's lips were tightly pursed into a straight line. Following the interpretation of the memory fragments extracted from Luigi's soul remembrance, his eyes abruptly turned even colder. Lower Star Domain. Find this little girl. I must make sure that she doesn't have everything going her way. She must live like a piece of trash. Struggling at death's door like a dog, forever unable to see the end and hope. We can't let her have the chance to go to the divine land. Once any talent appears, there's no need to wait for her to grow up miserably. Just kill her on the spot. Yes, Luigi accepts the order. Ah! Luigi screamed with his mouth agape. Like a fish out of water, he stiffly collapsed to the ground. Mo Lien swiped through the air and took out a brush and paper. She casually drew half of a jade pendant holding a string and carefully examined it. Seeing that it was exactly the same as in Luigi's memory, she put away the brush and paper and looked at Luigi as though she was looking at a dead man. Grabbing Luigi, she pressed down on his head and spat out spiritual energy. Chapter 1052. Ah! Far away in a foreign country, a middle-aged man in Shuntian Prefecture was originally cultivating in seclusion in a secret room. Suddenly, he howled and spat out a mouthful of blood. He suddenly hugged his head and started rolling on the ground. When the 2 disciples standing guard outside the stone room heard the commotion, they hastily slapped the stone door and shouted in horror, "Prefecture Lord! Prefecture Lord, what's wrong? Prefecture Lord?" The middle-aged man spat out a mouthful of bloody foam with a pitch-black expression. The stone door was pushed open by the disciples with a crash, and 2 disciples ran over with shocked expressions to support the Shuntian Prefecture Lord who had fallen to the side. "Prefecture Lord! Prefecture Lord! Quickly go get the spirit commandeering pill for this old man to consume." The Shuntian Prefecture Lord forced himself to finish speaking in one breath before instantly falling into a severe coma. He didn't expect that he had extracted a wisp of Lu Yiji's spiritual consciousness and stored it in his conscious to make it easier for him to control this person. Unexpectedly, someone actually followed the vine to the melon and used that wisp of Lu Yiji's spiritual consciousness to backfire on him. How hateful. But at this moment, he was already completely powerless to think about what exactly happened to Lu Yiji. His conscience had been torn apart by a valiant force, and heart-wrenching, bone-eroding pain spread throughout his body. It would be impossible for him to completely recover without at least half a year. The Shuntian prefecture lord had sunk into an unconscious coma, and all the disciples hurried over with abnormally terrified expressions. "Your Highness." Huifeng hastily reached out to support the swaying crown prince and looked at him worriedly. Soul-searching was heaven-defying in itself, and the user would suffer considerable pressure from heavenly law. Moreover, the crown prince had used his divine sense to heavily injure the other party's conscience this time, so he himself would also be slightly shaken. Prince Mo raised his hand slightly to stop Huifeng from speaking. "It's fine. Take some people to search their room and see if there are any other discoveries. If they could find the whereabouts of Ani Prefecture, Luotian Prefecture, and the others in passing, then they would eliminate them all at once." "Yes." Huifeng immediately selected a group of people to search Lu Yiji's room. Mo Lian's icy gaze landed on Qiu San. The latter quivered, and when he saw Lu Yiji's miserable state, he no longer had any thoughts of resistance. He hastily knelt down and repeatedly kowtowed to beg for mercy. "Your Highness, spare my life, Your Highness. I was just following orders, I." Qi Wuyu's sword, which was emitting an ink-colored light, accurately pierced through Qiu San's forehead between his eyebrows. The crown prince's eyes were cold as he pulled out the black moon. A trace of blood slid down the tip of the sword, leaving no trace of blood on the sword. Qiu San's eyes were wide open as he fell to the ground. He couldn't believe that the crown prince had executed him without a word. The crown prince's cold gaze swept over Lu Yiji, who was sitting at the side in a daze, and a chilly smile spread across his lips. "Lu Yiji, when you accepted this mission and came to the lower star domain in high spirits, I'm afraid you didn't expect this. To think that there would be a day when he would become a puppet in the hands of others, losing his soul and consciousness. He would be a slave for the rest of his life, serving others for the rest of his life. A cluster of flames directly swept Lu Yiji up, roasting and refining his flesh and soul before throwing it into a small bronze cauldron that suddenly flew out. Boom! The lid of the cauldron was tightly shut, blocking out all sounds. A trace of coldness flitted across the crown prince's lips. "After we obtain Shuntian Prefecture, you will be next." Shuntian Prefecture's Prefecture Lord, Gung. Peng. Cheng. Chapter 1053. The sky was beginning to brighten, and a faint glow from the morning sun shone on the windows of the small courtyard. Arbor, who had wrapped herself into a small cocoon, covered her head and curled up under the blankets. She tossed and turned restlessly, and beads of sweat appeared on her forehead. The nightmare was like a giant beast that wantonly wanted to tear her apart and swallow her whole. She had been having all kinds of messy dreams the whole night. She suddenly opened her eyes, and she breathed a sigh of relief with her forehead covered in sweat. When she struggled to get up, she suddenly realized that her limbs seemed to be crippled, and she could not move them at all. How could this be? She moved her body in shock. Something was wrong. She could not feel her limbs at all. She lay there stiffly, and she stared at the canopy above her head, racking her brains to figure out what was going on. Suddenly, she heard light footsteps, and a pale and slender figure turned in front of her. His dark eyes contained a wisp of dark green light as he sized her up. The cold sweat on Xiao Mu's forehead trickled down with a whoosh. Why was Qin Xian here? Why was Qin Xian here? The second young master reached out to take the blue and white porcelain bowl from the maidservant and sat down beside her. He looked at her with a smile and said, "This young master's little slave girl has been hungry for the past few days. Have you thought it through? Arbor calmed down in an instant. Dream on. She was dreaming. She had not escaped from the dream yet. In this life, she was no longer the little slave girl that he could knead and flatten over and over again. Why did the dream that she had not recalled for a long time appear so clearly in front of her eyes? She did not want to think about it. Ah! Why aren't you speaking? The young master Omega Kotoka's voice was obviously lower. After being raised by him for 2 years, she was very clear that this was the sign of the young master's anger. Clang! The sound of a porcelain spoon hitting a porcelain bowl suddenly rang out. This peerlessly handsome young master suddenly bent down, stretched out 2 fingers, and tightly pinched her thin and weak chin. You're really quite stubborn, aren't you? You really think that I don't dare to kill you? Kill me then. Bang! The porcelain bowl was smashed to the ground by the young master and shattered into pieces. The green in his eyes deepened, and the words that came out of his mouth were cold and merciless. You don't know what's good for you. I'll let you experience what it's like to die of hunger. He stood up and left with a flick of his sleeves. She could only see his cold and emotionless back disappearing from her sight. Arbor was dumbfounded. He felt a chill in his head. What was going on? Why was her mind so clear? Yet, it was as if she had been possessed in her previous life. The hoarse voice coming out of her mouth was different from her own. She was dreaming, she was dreaming. Don't panic, she must try her best to wake up. But why did she feel a little creepy and fearful? Could it be that he would never wake up? Would she have to go through the horrors of her previous life again? Arbor's little face scrunched up, and he shifted uneasily on the bed. Mo Yen. Mo Yen, where are you? Sob Mo Yen. Mo Yen. The black ferrule in his conscious abruptly leaped out on its own. Under the faint sunlight, Mo Yen's slender, moon-white figure emerged, reaching out to grab the window. Right at this moment, the door to the side room was suddenly kicked open by someone. Sixth Zhang's slender figure appeared at the doorway, the sword in his hand pointed straight at the shadow in the corner of the room. Who are you? The flute player's hand paused slightly, and the bewitching sound of the flute disappeared. Chapter 1054. The corners of that person's mouth curled into a faint smile under the veil. Then, without even looking back, he flipped out of the window. Don't run. Sixth Zheng shouted angrily and chased after him. At this time, the door was pushed open again. Qin Susu stared blankly as Mo Yen's faint figure slowly faded away. The black ferrule returned to Arbor's conscious. At the same time, Arbor abruptly opened her eyes. She forcefully lifted the bedding on her body and sat up straight. Qin Susu's hand, which was holding a basin of water, paused slightly. Her gaze changed slightly as she scanned the room's surroundings. Who came? Arbor quickly got up and casually put on a robe. When she got up, her body swayed slightly. She suddenly felt her head ache from the nightmares of the night. She couldn't help but reach out to support her forehead. The people in the small courtyard were all startled awake by Sixth Zheng's shout. They hurriedly put on their clothes, got up, opened the door, and walked out of the room. All of them looked at each other, their faces slightly pale, and their eyes were filled with a hint of fear. What was going on? They actually slept so soundly last night and had nightmares all the way until dawn. It would be hard to believe that someone hadn't secretly tampered with them. Are you all right? Qin Susu hurriedly threw down the basin and hurried to Arbor's side. Crown Princess. Lightning's slightly anxious voice came from outside the window. I'm fine. Only after speaking did Arbor realize that her voice was a bit dry. She couldn't help but cough lightly twice. What a powerful nightmare demonic flute. It could actually trap her in the dreamland and almost prevent her from leaving. Arbor pressed her hands on her knees. She only felt waves of dizziness. She hastily ran to the copper basin and retched several times, but nothing came out. Miss Chow. Qin Susu anxiously followed over. What's going on? Do Fengqi ran in noisily. Looking at Qin Susu, who had a normal expression, she suddenly pointed at her and asked loudly, Qin Susu, why are you fine? Why is everyone trapped by nightmares? Everyone's faces are pale, but you look completely fine. Did you do this? What nightmare? Qin Susu looked at Do Fengqi in front of her in astonishment and said, I don't know if it was because I was too excited or something last night, but I couldn't fall asleep. Fearing that I would disturb Miss Chiao's sleep, I snuck out of the courtyard. I went to the small forest near the entrance of the base to cultivate. I didn't come back until dawn. I don't know what you're talking about. Cut it out. Everyone was caught by the nightmare and had nightmares all night. Everyone is feeling terrible right now, and you're the only one who's fine. Who would believe that? I really don't know what you're talking about. Stop arguing. Arbor, who felt as if there was a big hammer pounding back and forth in his head, shouted coldly. The two of them stopped bickering and turned to look at her. It's not Susu. It's indeed not Miss Qin. Little Sixth Zheng walked in from the door and glanced worriedly at Arbor. That person was wearing a loose black robe. I couldn't make out their figure, and even their voice was androgynous. Then how can you prove that it wasn't Qin Susu's doing? Do Fengqi steeled her heart and refused to let go of Qin Susu. You're crazy. Qin Susu said irritably, if I knew that nightmare, I'd be the first to kill you. So that you wouldn't be like a shit stirrer all day long, pestering the team endlessly. Chapter 1055. Who are you calling a shit stirrer? Do Fengqi glared, her lungs about to explode from anger at Qin Susu. Don't be noisy. Arbor shouted angrily, only to feel her head hurt even more. Throw her out. Lightning flashed to Do Fengqi's side. Without another word, she grabbed her collar and directly threw her heavily outside the door. Ah! Do Fengqi wasn't that inexperienced to begin with. It was just that she had been startled awake by a nightmare last night. At this time, her entire body was somewhat exhausted, and she was caught off guard, so she only realized with a start after being thrown out by lightning. Bam! Arbor directly slammed the door shut in front of Do Fengqi. That way, this woman wouldn't be like a crow, constantly making noise by her ear. This flute sound can cause damage to a person's conscience. Fortunately, we didn't hear it for too long, no more than an hour, little Sixth Zheng said seriously. Sixth young master, you were the first to discover this flute sound? Qin Susu asked. Sixth Zheng nodded. At first, I was also affected by the nightmare, but then I used a method to break free. Only then did I realize that this flute sound was targeting our small courtyard, causing everyone to be affected by the nightmare. Even those hidden guards by the crown princess's side who had yet to appear had all been affected. As a result, he was burning with anxiety and immediately ran over to investigate Arbor's situation. Only then did he discover that the flute sound was coming from Miss Chiao's room. Little Sixth. Arbor rubbed her unbearably aching head and walked in front of Sixth Zheng without consulting anyone. Raise your hand. Sixth Zheng subconsciously wanted to hide his arm behind his back. However, when he met Miss Chiao's eyes that were fixated on him, he couldn't help but obediently take his arm out from behind his back. Under his rolled-up sleeve, there were 2 glaring cuts. The bloodstains were half-dried, and the wound was extremely deep. Are you a pig? You're actually so ruthless to yourself. Arbor rolled her eyes at him. Saying that he used a method to break free, it was this stupid method of cutting his own arm to startle himself awake from the pain. Come here and apply medicine. Arbor irritably tugged at him. They're all superficial wounds. It's not a big hindrance. Under her glare, little Sixth Zheng lowered his voice and obediently walked to a stool on the side to sit down. Arbor quickly cleaned his wound and bandaged it. He frowned and said, I don't know who did this to us. I feel that it should be someone who came with us. People from other countries are more likely to make a move. Arbor was puzzled. If this person wanted to deal with her, why didn't he just kill her directly? What was the purpose of making her enter the incubus after such a long detour? Miss Chiao, we need to be extra careful on this trip. Arbor nodded and said, let's go, it's about time. After the three of them pushed open the door, Do Fengqi, Duan Siren, Hong Boi, and Fan Qiuming also finished their preparations. However, her gaze was somewhat complicated as she looked at Qin Susu. Presumably, Do Fengqi had already gossiped in front of them just now. Qin Susu shrugged nonchalantly. I don't mind if I'm alone, as long as you insist. Can everyone be a bit more united? Duan Siren said, before this matter is clarified, no one should frame a good person, okay? Now that we have a strong enemy waiting for an opportunity to make a move, we should be even more united. Duan Siren continued, after all, that person peeked into our dreams and should be thinking of ways to make things difficult for us. Chapter 1056. Arbor felt all the hairs on her body stand on end. Peeping into her dream. Could it be that everything that appeared in her dream just now had been seen by someone? Soon after, a surge of anger welled up in her heart. Truly abominable fellow. When she thought about how she appeared like a blank sheet of paper in front of a stranger's eyes, Arbor felt incomparably disgusted, as if she had eaten a fly. Holy Maiden. A young woman in the prime of her youth wearing a white veil gracefully walked to the stream and bowed. They have set off. The demonic cult Holy Maiden, Sikong Fuling, seemed to have not heard the woman's words. She minded her own business and sat by the stream, swinging her snow-white legs and kicking the lush green water in amusement. Holy Maiden, do you want this subordinate to send someone to follow them? Sigh. Sikong Fuling lazily half-sprawled on a rock by the stream, one hand propping up her chin as she softly murmured, when I wake up later, I will naturally go find them. Yes, then this subordinate will take her leave first. Sikong Fuling swung her small leg and kicked the water again. Her slender legs slowly crossed as she reached behind the rock and took out a faint jade-green jade flute. Her small hand gently stroked it as she chuckled and muttered to herself, I actually can't see your dream. Arbor, oh Arbor, tell me, how should I torture you? Logically speaking, the Phoenix Nether demonic flute should be able to clearly see anyone's dream when they were captured by a nightmare. However, that savage little girl seemed to be an exception. Her nightmare realm was actually blurry and hazy, and she couldn't see anything clearly. A bit interesting to, my Chiao's section break, it's not too early for us to enter the forest this time. Everyone, tell us what you know. Otherwise, we will be delayed when we search for the secret realm. Wei Nanshu was the first to speak. Arbor had 7 people on this trip, including Wei Nanshu, Bailey Wu, and Xiaomi, and 14 others. If there were no accidents, there would be 21 people entering the secret realm. However, at this time, there were many imperial guards following behind the princes and princesses of Northern Wei, Southern Bailey, and Eastern Ing. A large group of people entered the forest. It could be considered as a group of 100 people. If it wasn't for the fact that they were courting death and insisted on charging into the mystical beast horde in the forest, there wouldn't be any major issues with their safety. All Xian beasts had a bit of intelligence. When they saw such a large group of people passing by, they naturally wouldn't provoke them if they were tactful. The entrance to the Mystic Beast Forest secret realm changes every 10 years, but the general area remains the same, Bailey Wu said. Yes, it should be in the center of the Mystic Beast Forest. We have to cross it. 5 days should be enough. Xiaomi nodded in agreement. There are many ferocious beasts in the Mystic Beast Forest. For the sake of everyone's safety, I suggest that we elect a captain. In these 5 days, they would listen to the captain until they safely entered the secret realm. What do you think? Wei Nanshu asked again. Your Highness, you're right. Jin Hongwan from the Jin family fort laughed heartily. This is also for everyone's safety. I'm sorry. I'm not used to putting my life in the hands of strangers. Upon hearing this, Arbor directly walked forward after saying this. Little Sixth Zheng and Qin Susu immediately followed. Hong Bai, Do Fengqi, and the others hesitated for less than a second before following as well. Compared to staying with these other countrymen with ulterior motives, they instead felt that following this cold-faced crown princess seemed to be safer. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.